Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto is summoned to DxD and gets a harem with all the female devil's girls? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Unbound Storm. The air in the old schoolhouse was thick enough to chew, heavy with the scent of burning incense, ozone, and something ancient, like dust from a tomb stirred for the first time in a millennium. Rias Grimori, her crimson hair a stark banner of defiance against the gloom, felt a bead of sweat trace a path down her temple. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as she held THM over the intricate magic circle glowing on the floor. It pulsed with a malevolent violet light, the runes writhing like living things. This was a summoning of last resort, a desperate gambit fueled by fear and pride. The name, Riser Phoenix, was a cage closing around her, and this ritual was the key she was forging to break the lock. As this truly wise President Kiba Yuto's voice was a low, melodic murmur from his position by the door, his hand resting on the hilt of an unseen blade. He was her knight, ever loyal, ever watchful, and his handsome face was etched with a concern that Miro read the unease coiling in her own stomach. Wisdom is a luxury I can no longer afford, Kiba, Rias replied, her voice tight. She forced it to remain level, projecting the confidence of the Grimori heiress. Not the terrified young woman she felt like. My brother offers political solutions. My father offers empty reassurances. Riser offers me a gilded cage. I need a weapon. Something decisive. Something no one expects. Akano Himahima, her queen, stood near the windows, the dim moonlight tracing the elegant lines of her form. A serene, almost playful smile graced her lips, but her eyes, twin pools of violet, held a dangerous spark. Fufufu, and what could be more decisive than a being torn from another reality? The possibilities are thrilling. Her gentle tone did little to soothe the frantic energy thrumming through the room. Akano found excitement in the precipice of disaster, a trait Rias both admired and feared. In the corner, perched on the edge of a worn sofa, Kaneko Tuju, her rook, nibbled on a chocolate bar with a detached air. Her petite frame belied a strength that could shatter mountains. She said nothing, but her golden eyes were fixed on the pulsating circle, her brow furrowed in a rare display of overt concern. The energy is wrong, she stated flatly, her voice barely a whisper. It feels hungry. Rias ignored the warning. It had to work. She had pored over the forbidden texts, cross-referenced demonic apocrypha with fragments of celestial lore. The ritual was designed to bypass the usual channels, to punch a hole through the fabric of dimensions and pull forth a being of immense power. Binding it to her is a familiar powerful enough to give even the immortal Riser Phoenix pause. The preparations are complete, she announced, raising her voice. CE to be heard over the crackling hum of the circle. The incantation requires absolute focus. No matter what you see or feel, do not break the perimeter. She closed her eyes, drawing upon her demonic energy. The power of destruction, the legacy of Baal, surged within her, a crimson torrent she channeled into the ritual. The words, a guttural blend of forgotten tongues, tore from her throat. They were not just sounds. They were commands, hooks cast into the infinite void between worlds. The circle flared. The temperature in the room plummeted, frost tracing delicate patterns on the window panes. A wind, born from nowhere, whipped through the clubhouse, sending loose papers scattering like frightened birds. Kiba drew his sword, a shimmer of demonic steel in the gloom. Akano's smile vanished, replaced by a focused intensity as arcs of yellow lightning danced around her fingertips. Kaneko stood up, dropping her chocolate bar, her small fists clenched at her sides. The light from the circle intensified, no longer violet but a blinding, searing white. Rias gritted her teeth, pouring more and more of her power into the spell, fighting to maintain control. The runes began to fracture, the intricate lines of the circle cracking like overstressed glass. President, it's overloading, Kiba shouted, taking a step forward. Stay back, Rias screamed, her hair flying wildly around her. Kaneko was right. The energy felt wrong. It wasn't just hungry, it was voracious. The ritual wasn't just pulling something through, it was being hijacked. A power far greater than she had anticipated had latched onto her spell from the other side, using it as an anchor and pulling with titanic force. The circle shattered. The explosion was not of sound and fire, but of pure, crushing pressure and absolute darkness. The light vanished, swallowed by a void that seemed to suck the very air from their lungs. For a heart-stopping moment, there was nothing. No sound, no light, no sensation. Just the terrifying, silent emptiness of a rift torn open in reality. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. The pressure vanished. The light returned, albeit dimmer now, the magical glow of the circle gone, leaving behind only the pale moonlight. In the center of the room, where the circle had been, was a shallow crater, the floorboards splintered and blackened. And standing in the middle of it was a man. He was tall, with a lean, powerful build visible even beneath the strange, practical clothing he wore, a black jacket with vibrant orange shoulders and pants to match. His hair was a brilliant spiky gold, like a sunburst, and his eyes were a startling, piercing blue. On his cheeks were faint whisker-like marks, giving his otherwise handsome face a feral edge. He wasn't panting or disoriented. He simply stood there, his hands in his pockets, calmly surveying the room with an unnerving stillness. One moment, Naruto Uzumaki had been sitting atop the fourth Hokage's stone head, feeling the gentle Konoha breeze and the familiar, rumbling presence of Kurama sleeping peacefully in his soul. It was a rare moment of perfect tranquility, a peace he had bled and fought and nearly died for 100 times over. The next, he felt a bizarre, insistent tug, like a fishhook snagging in his very essence. It was not a summoning jutsu. He knew every seal and signature for those. This was something else, something alien and raw. Before he could react, the world dissolved into a nauseating vortex of white noise and crushing blackness. Now, the scent of grass and home was gone, replaced by this strange, sterile air tinged with something cloyingly sweet and faintly metallic. The four figures arrayed around him were tense, their bodies coiled like springs. He could feel their energy. It was similar to chakra, but different, wilder, less disciplined, and tinged with an emotional signature he couldn't quite place. One felt like a storm held in check, another like a drawn sword, the smallest one like the unyielding earth. And the crimson-haired girl, hers was a tempest of raw power and terrified pride. He met her gaze. She was clearly the leader. Her eyes, a beautiful shade of blue-green, were wide with a mixture of awe, fear, and a dawning, dangerous possessiveness. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, his voice calm and even. It cut through the tense silence, devoid of the panic they might have expected. "And where is this?" Rias took a breath, struggling to reclaim her composure. The sheer presence of the man was overwhelming. The raw power radiating from him was a physical force, a sea-lent tsunami that dwarfed her own considerable reserves. It was more than she could have ever dreamed of. This changed everything. "I am Rias Grimori," she declared, her voice regaining its aristocratic authority. "And I am the one who has summoned you. You are in Kuo Town, Japan. By the rites of summoning, you are now bound to me. You are my familiar." Naruto's eyebrow twitched. Familiar. He took a hand out of his pocket, flexing his fingers. The word sounded demeaning, like pet. He looked at the shattered floor, at the fearful expressions on the faces of her companions, and then back at her. A faint smile touched his lips, one that held no humor. "I think you're mistaken," he said simply. "I don't belong to anyone." Before Rias could retort, before the standoff could escalate, the very air in the room warped. A grotesque tear in space, shimmering with chaotic energy, ripped open near the far wall. The stench of sulfur and decay billowed out, a foul miasma that made Naruto's nose wrinkle in disgust. A creature crawled through the rift, a horror of scuttling legs and razor-sharp mandibles. It was vaguely insectoid, 10 feet tall, with a carapace of glistening black chitin that seemed to absorb the light. Drool, acidic and green, dripped from its maw, sizzling as it hit the floorboards. "A stray devil," Kiba exclaimed, his sword now fully materialized in his hand. "Riser must have sent it to test my lady's new familiar. Get ready," Rias commanded, her attention snapping from Naruto to the immediate threat. "Kiba, on me. Akeno, provide support. Kaneko, wait for an opening." The Grimori peerage sprang into action with practiced efficiency. Kiba became a blur, his sword flashing as he moved to flank the creature, seeking a weak point in its armor. Akeno rose into the air, a halo of lightning crackling around her as she prepared to strike from above. Kaneko moved with deceptive speed, her small form hugging the shadows as she circled the monster. Naruto didn't move, he just watched, his blue eyes narrowed in detached analysis. He saw their teamwork, their courage. He also saw their limitations. The stray was brutally fast and overwhelmingly strong. It swiped a massive claw at Kiba, who dodged with incredible speed, but the wind from the blow sent him stumbling back. The creature's chitinous armor was tougher than steel. Kiba's sword screeched against it, sparks flying. But it failed to do more than leave a shallow scratch. Now, Akeno, Rias yelled. A bolt of holy lightning, a brilliant fusion of demonic and angelic power, slammed down from the ceiling. It struck the stray dead center, engulfing it in a blinding flash. The smell of burnt ozone filled the room. For a moment, the creature staggered, letting out a piercing shriek of pain. Kaneko. ASM. All shadow detached itself from the wall. Kaneko appeared directly beneath the beast's head, her fist cocked back. With a guttural cry, she drove it upward. The impact was like a cannonball strike, the sound a dull, wet crunch. The blow, which would have pulverized solid concrete, was enough to snap the stray's head back, but it wasn't enough to put it down. Enraged, the stray swung a massive pincer, not at Kaneko, but at the one who had commanded the attack. Rias. Her eyes widened. She was still gathering the energy for a decisive blast of her power of destruction, a swirling orb of crimson and black energy forming in her palm. She was vulnerable. Kiba was too far away to intercept. Time seemed to slow. The pincer, a blur of black death, sliced through the air. And then, a flash of orange. Naruto was there. He hadn't seemed to move, yet he was now standing directly in front of Rias, his back to her. He raised a single hand, catching the monstrous, building-sized pincer in his palm. There was no earth-shattering impact. No desperate struggle. He just caught it. The momentum of the creature's attack died instantly, as if it had hit an immovable object. The stray devil, a being of pure demonic rage and power, froze. Its single, multifaceted eye widening in what could only be described as confusion. "Stay back," Naruto said, not even looking over his shoulder at the stunned girl behind him. "You'll get hurt." He tightened his grip. With a sound like grinding stone, he twisted his wrist. The stray's pincer, made of material stronger than any earthly metal, buckled and then snapped with a sickening crack. The monster shrieked, a high-pitched sound of pure agony, and staggered back, clutching its mangled limb. The entire Grimoire peerage was frozen in shock. What they had struggled against as a team, this man had just casually maimed with one hand. What are you?" Rias breathed, staring at his back. Naruto ignored her. He looked at the wounded, enraged stray devil. He saw no malice in its eye. Just pain and feral instinct. A tool, a weapon sent by another. He sighed. He was so tired of fighting. "Let's end this," he murmured to himself. The stray, driven by pain, lunged forward. Its remaining claw and its snapping mandibles aimed at the blonde man who had injured it. Naruto simply vanished. One moment he was there, the next he was gone, replaced by a puff of smoke. The stray's attack hit empty air, sending it crashing into the wall. It turned, confused, searching for its target. "Up here." The voice came from above. The stray looked up. Naruto was standing on the ceiling, held there by a simple application of chakra to his feet. He was holding his right hand out, palm up. A swirling sphere of brilliant blue energy, humming with a sound like 1,000 angry hornets, materialized in his hand. It spun with impossible speed, a miniature hurricane contained in his palm. Akeno, floating near the ceiling, stared at the technique, her breath catching in her throat. The sheer density of the power contained in that small orb was terrifying. It was controlled, focused, and utterly lethal. "Rasengan," Naruto said, the name of the technique a simple, declarative statement. He dropped from the ceiling. He wasn't fast like Kiba, who was a blur of motion. He was something else entirely. He moved with a purpose that seemed to bend space around him, closing the distance in an instant. The stray had no time to react. Naruto slammed the swirling sphere into the creature's back. The impact was devastating. The Rasengan drilled into the stray's carapace, not exploding, but grinding and expanding with catastrophic force. The chitinous armor that had deflected Kiba's sword shattered like an eggshell. The creature was lifted off its feet and sent flying across the room. Spiraling like a thrown top, it slammed into the far wall with a final, wet crunch, and then slid to the floor, silent and still. A massive, swirling pattern of cracks decorated the wall where it had impacted. Silence descended once more, thick and heavy. The fight, which had been a desperate struggle for the peerage, had lasted less than 10 seconds from the moment Naruto had intervened. He stood over the fallen creature, his expression unreadable. He then turned to face the four devils, his blue eyes sweeping over them. Their awe and fear were palpable. He could feel it rolling off them in waves. He didn't enjoy it. He'd had enough of people looking at him like he was a monster or a god. He just wanted to go home. Rias finally found her voice. It was shaky, but she forced the quaver out of it. This was an opportunity, a terrifying, glorious opportunity. With this kind of power at her side, Rise or Phoenix would be nothing. The entire underworld would have to take notice. You see, she said, a triumphant smile gracing her lips as she stepped forward. This is the power I have summoned. The power that will now serve the House of Grimoire. You are magnificent. Now, let us complete the pact. Offer me your hand, and you shall become my. No, the word was quiet, but it hit with the force of a physical blow. It stopped her cold. Naruto's gaze hardened, the calm detachment replaced by an unyielding iron will. I told you, I don't belong to you. I don't belong to anyone. I am not your familiar. I am not your weapon. I am Naruto Uzumaki. Akeno drifted gently to the floor, her playful demeanor gone, replaced by a calculating curiosity. But you answered the summoning, she pointed out, her voice a silken purr. The ancient laws are clear. The summoned is bound to the summoner. Your laws don't apply to me, Naruto replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. Your ritual didn't summon me. It snagged me. It was a broken net cast into an ocean you don't understand, and I am what you dragged back. You don't have a chain strong enough to hold me. Rias's pride, the ingrained arrogance of a high-class devil in a grimoire, flared. You dare defy me. I am the one who brought you here. Your power is mine to command by right. She flared her own demonic energy, a crimson aura washing over the room, pressing down with the weight of her lineage. It was an aura that made lesser beings tremble. Naruto didn't even flinch. He just looked at her, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. And then, he let go. Just a little, just a fraction of the power sleeping within him. It wasn't his own chakra. It was something older, wilder, and infinitely more malevolent. The very atmosphere of the room changed. The air grew thick and heavy, charged with a suffocating pressure that made it hard to breathe. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to deepen, to stretch, to coalesce into forms of pure dread. An aura, a presence so immense and so anciently evil it felt like the world itself was screaming, washed over them. It was not the proud, fiery aura of a devil lord. It was the raw, untamed killing intent of a primordial beast. Rias Grimoire, heiress to On, of the underworld's most powerful families, stumbled back, a gasp tearing from her throat. Her crimson aura was snuffed out like a candle in a hurricane. Kiba fell to one knee, his face pale, his sword trembling in his grip. Akeno's smile was wiped clean from her face, her eyes wide with a terror she hadn't felt since she was a child. Even Kaneko, the stoic rook, took an involuntary step back, her cat ears flattening against her head as pure, instinctual fear flooded her senses. They felt like they were standing at the bottom of the ocean, the weight of ages crushing them. They saw, for a fleeting instant, not the blonde man in front of them, but a vision superimposed over him. A monstrous, nine-tailed fox of pure, burning hatred, its fangs the size of mountains, its roar the sound of the end of the world. The pressure vanished as quickly as it came. Naruto stood there as before, hands back in his pockets, his expression once again calm. But the message had been delivered with absolute clarity. I am not your pawn, he said. His voice now a low, dangerous growl that resonated with the phantom power they had just felt. You brought me to this world against my will. The only thing I want from you is a way to get back to my own. Help me with that, and maybe I'll help you with your problems. But make no mistake, Ryust. He took a step forward, his blue eyes boring into hers, holding her captive. We are not master and servant. From this moment on, if we are anything at all, we are equals. The occult research clubhouse was silent, save for the sound of 4 frantically beating hearts. The storm had been summoned, and it was utterly, terrifyingly unbound. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. A King's Terms. The silence that followed Naruto's declaration was a living thing, a tle sheet of glass that no one dared break. Ryust, who had commanded legions and stood before kings, found herself utterly silenced. The phantom pressure of that monstrous chakra still lingered in the marrow of her bones. A primal terror that overshadowed a lifetime of aristocratic conditioning. Her mind reeled, trying to reconcile the casual, almost lazy posture of the man before her with the apocalyptic power she had just felt. He had not summoned a familiar. He had kicked down the door to another universe and pulled a god of war through by the collar. Kiba had managed to get to his feet, but his hand hadn't left the hilt of his sword, his knuckles white. Akino's usual playful mask was gone, replaced by a look of profound, almost reverent fascination. Her senses, half-fallen angel, had screamed at her with a clarity that was bone-chilling. What he had released was not demonic, nor was it holy. It was something else entirely, a force of nature, raw and ancient. Kaneko had retria, tied to the relative safety of the corner, her golden eyes, wide and unblinking, fixed on Naruto. She was sensing him not with demonic energy, but with the instincts of a predator that had just met something much higher on the food chain. Naruto, for his part, simply let the silence stretch. He had made his point. Now it was their turn to accept it or challenge it. He sincerely hoped they chose the former. He was in an unknown world, low on information, and fighting his way out of this room would be a messy, counterproductive start. He watched Ryust, the crimson-haired leader. He saw the war in her eyes, her shattered pride fighting against a dawning pragmatism. She was a king, he realized, even if she was a young one. She was weighing her pieces, reassessing the entire board now that a rogue queen had suddenly appeared in the middle of it. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a new power flooded the room. This one was different. It was refined, immensely powerful, yet controlled, a vast, placid lake compared to Naruto's raging ocean. The air shimmered, and a magic circle, this one a brilliant, regal crimson emblazoned with an elegant crest, bloomed on the floor. From the glowing sigils, 2 figures emerged. The first was a woman in a French maid's uniform, her silver hair braided immaculately, her expression a mask of cool, professional detachment. Her power felt like a razor-thin sheet of ice, beautiful and impossibly sharp, but it was the man beside her who commanded the room's attention instantly. He had the same striking crimson hair as Ryust, but his was a deeper, richer shade, like dried blood. His kind, violet eyes held an ancient sorrow and a power so vast it felt like a law of physics. He wore a simple but elegant black suit, and his presence was one of absolute, unquestionable authority. He smiled gently, a disarming gesture that did nothing to hide the fact that he was, to his very core, one of the most powerful beings in this world. Ryust, my dear sister, he said, his voice calm and melodic, yet it carried an echo of command that made the very air vibrate. It seems you've had a rather eventful evening. I felt the surge from Luciferod. It was quite loud. Ryust stiffened, a flush of color rising to her cheeks. Brother, what are you doing here? Sears Lucifer, one of the 4 great Satans and the reigning Devil King, chuckled softly. His gaze swept the room, taking in the splintered floor, the cracked wall, the dead stray devil, his shaken sister and her peerage, and finally settling on Naruto. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes harpened with an intensity that could peel the soul bare. He felt it, even with the power withdrawn. The lingering echo of it was like the afterimage of a star exploding. I think the better question is, what have you been doing? He said, his tone still light. He took a step forward, his eyes locked with Naruto's. The maid, Graphia Lucifuge, the legendary strongest queen, moved with him, a silent, silver-haired shadow. And who, pray tell, is this? Naruto met the Devil King's gaze without flinching. He could feel the power difference. This man was on another level entirely, leagues beyond the 4 he'd met so far. It reminded him of meeting the Sage of 6 Paths, a being whose power was so integrated into their existence that it was impossible to tell where the individual ended and their power began. Still, Naruto had stood against gods and won. He wasn't about to be intimidated now. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki," he said, his voice level. "As for what I'm doing here, I was hoping your sister could tell me. She's the one who dragged me out of my home." Searzex's eyebrow rose in amusement. The lack of fear, the directness, it was refreshing. He looked from Naruto back to his sister. Rias straightened her back, the Grimoire pride reasserting itself in the presence of her brother. "I was conducting a summoning ritual for a new familiar, to strengthen my peerage before the engagement." She stumbled over the last word, a flash of bitterness in her eyes. "There were complications. The ritual brought him here." Graphia took a step forward, her voice as crisp and cold as a winter morning. "He does not feel like a familiar. His energy signature is unbound. It is foreign, chaotic, and carries no trace of a contract." She looked at Naruto as if he were a complex equation she was solving. Her silver eyes analytical and wary. "That's because I'm not a familiar," Naruto stated plainly. "I told her, I don't make contracts. I'm not a servant." Searzex's smile widened. "Oh, this is fascinating." He walked around the dead stray, inspecting it with a curious glance. "And I assume this was his handiwork." He gestured to the corpse. Kiba finally spoke up, his voice filled with awe. "Yes, Lord Lucifer. The stray was powerful. We were struggling to contain it. He finished it in seconds. With one attack," Kaneko added quietly from the corner, her gaze still fixed on Naruto. The Devil King's full attention returned to Naruto. The gentle amusement in his eyes was now overlaid with a profound, calculating interest. He was no longer just curious about a summoning accident. He was evaluating a major political and military asset that had just materialized on his sister's doorstep. An unbound asset, which meant it was also a potential threat. "Naruto Uzumaki," Searzex said, the name rolling off his tongue as if he were tasting it. "You say you were brought here against your will. That implies you wish to return." "More than anything," Naruto confirmed. The ache for home, for the familiar faces of his friends, for the view from the Hokage monument, was a sharp, physical pain in his chest. "I see." Searzex clasped his hands behind his back, beginning to pace slowly. "That presents us with a unique situation. Interdimensional travel is not a precise science. It is a messy, often impossible art. The energy required, the calculations, the risks, finding exact coordinates to your specific reality, assuming it still exists in a state you can return to, would be a monumental undertaking. It would require the greatest minds and resources the underworld has to offer." Naruto's jaw tightened. He understood the subtext perfectly. This was the opening move of a negotiation. "So you're saying you can help me, but it will be difficult," Naruto stated, cutting through the preamble. "I'm saying it would require my personal attention, and the full backing of the House of Grimoire," Searzex corrected smoothly. "Such resources are not allocated lightly. They are typically reserved for matters of state, for allies of great importance." The unspoken offer hung in the air between them. "Be our ally, brother. He is my familiar." Rias interjected, her voice rising in protest. "He is bound to me. He should serve me, and in return." "Rias," Searzex said, his voice dropping the gentle tone. It was now laced with the steel of a king. "Look at him. Does he look like something that can be bound? Your ritual was a shot in the dark, and you hit a leviathan. You were lucky he hasn't decided to level your clubhouse, and perhaps the entire town along with it. Do not provoke him with talk of servitude." The rebuke stung, and Rias fell silent, her cheeks burning. Searzex turned back to Naruto. "My sister is in a difficult position. She is engaged to be married to a man she does not respect. A union designed for political convenience rather than affection. Her pride and her freedom are on the line. She was desperate. She sought power to carve out her own destiny." He gestured to Rias. "It seems, in a way, she found it. Just not in a form she can control." Naruto looked at Rias. He saw the flicker of pain and frustration in her eyes. He understood desperation. He understood fighting for your freedom. His entire life had been one long struggle against the cages others tried to build around him. He didn't like her arrogance, but he understood the fear beneath it. A rating game. Sears continued, seeing he had Naruto's attention. A formal duel between my sister's peerage and her fiancé's. If she wins, the engagement is void. If she loses, she must marry him. She sought a powerful piece to add to her board for this game. You, however, are not a piece. You are a player in your own right. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place for Naruto. Forced marriage. A high-stakes duel. It was a classic tale of a cornered princess. So here is my proposal. Naruto Uzumaki, the Devil King said, his voice resonating with sincerity. Lend my sister your strength. Not as a servant, but as an ally. Help her win her freedom. Stand with her in this rating game. In return, I will personally oversee the project to find a path back to your world. You will have the full, unconditional support of myself and the entire Grimoire clan. All our libraries, all our scholars, all our power, dedicated to your goal. It was a good offer. A damn good one. It gave him a concrete objective and a powerful incentive. More than that, it acknowledged his autonomy. It was a partnership, not a contract. I have terms, Naruto said, crossing his arms. First, I fight how I want, when I want. I'm not one of her chess pieces to be ordered around. I'll listen to strategy, but the final decision on my actions is mine. Second, my help is for this one problem. The engagement. After that, our deal is still in effect. You find my way home, but my obligation to fight for her is done, unless I choose otherwise. Third, he added, his eyes narrowing slightly, I don't kill. I'll defeat this riser fellow. But I won't take his life. That's not how I do things. Sears listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Naruto finished, a genuine, appreciative smile spread across his face. He wasn't just dealing with raw power, he was dealing with a man of principle and intellect. This was even better than he'd hoped. Your terms are surprisingly honorable, Sears mused. And they are acceptable, all of them. Graphia, the silver-haired maid gave a slight, formal bow. The terms are clear, my lord. An alliance, not subjugation. Assistance for a specif. IC task. The annulment of the engagement via rating game, in exchange for extensive research into interdimensional transit. The ally dictates his own combat parameters, including a no-kill clause. Excellent, Sears declared, clapping his hands together once. Then we have an agreement. He extended a hand to Naruto. Naruto looked at the offered hand for a moment before taking it. The Devil King's grip was firm, warm, and pulsed with a quiet, bottomless power. An agreement, Naruto confirmed. Wonderful. Rias, you will see to it that our guest is comfortable. Provide him with whatever he needs. He is no longer your potential familiar, he is a crucial ally to the House of Grimoire. Treat him as such. The command was gentle, but the implication was clear, do not mess this up. With a final, warm smile to his sister and a last intrigued look at Naruto, Sears Lucifer turned. The crimson magic circle flared to life once more. We will be in touch, Naruto Uzumaki. I look forward to seeing what you can do. He and Graphia stepped into the light and vanished, leaving the scent of old magic and royal authority in their wake. The room was quiet again, but the atmosphere had changed completely. The tension of conflict was gone, replaced by the awkward uncertainty of a new, strange alliance. Rias stared at Naruto, her expression a complex mixture of resentment, relief, and grudging respect. He had faced down her brother, one of the most powerful beings in existence, and negotiated with him as an equal. He had won not just his freedom, but her own as well. Well, Akeno said, breaking the silence with a soft giggle. Her playful demeanor returning. That was certainly more exciting than summoning a griffin. Welcome to the Occult Research Club, Naruto-kun. Later that night, the old schoolhouse was quiet. Naruto had been given a room, a simple but clean space that Rias had magically furnished. But he couldn't sleep. The world felt wrong. The energy in the air, the feel of the moonlight. The very silence was alien. It set his teeth on edge. He felt adrift, untethered from everything he knew. Kurama was a warm, sleepy presence in his soul, a familiar anchor in this strange sea. But even the great Biju was unsettled. Needing air, Naruto slipped out of his room and made his way through the darkened building. He found a staircase leading up and emerged onto the flat roof. The night was cool, and a vast, Star-dusted sky stretched out above him, the moon a perfect silver disk. It was almost like home, but not quite. The constellations were all wrong. He wasn't alone. A small figure was sitting on the ledge, her legs dangling over the side, her white hair looking almost ethereal in the moonlight. Kaneko. She was staring up at the unfamiliar moon, her expression distant and melancholic. She didn't seem surprised to see him, turning her head slightly as he approached. Naruto didn't say anything at first. He just walked to the ledge a few feet away from her and sat down, letting his own legs hang in the empty space. For a few long minutes, they sat in a comfortable silence, two outcasts watching a foreign sky. He could feel it from her, clearer now in the quiet of the night. His sage abilities, always passively active to some degree, picked up on more than just energy. He could sense the intricate flow of life, of nature, and the emotional state of those around him. From Kaneko, he felt a deep, gnawing loneliness, a profound sadness, and a tightly leashed fear. It was a fear directed inward, a fear of something inside her. It was a feeling so familiar it was like looking in a mirror. He reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a chocolate bar he'd swiped from the kitchen downstairs. He held it out to her without a word. She looked at the offering, then up at his face. Her golden eyes were questioning. She took it slowly, her small fingers brushing against his. "Thanks," she mumbled, unwrapping it and taking a small bite. "Couldn't sleep either, huh?" Naruto said, looking back at the moon. "Too quiet," she replied. "And too loud." He knew exactly what she meant. The silence of a new place that made the noise in your own head deafening. "You're not like them," she said after another moment, her voice soft. "The others. Your power, it feels different. It's not just big, it's lonely." Naruto was taken aback. For all her quietness, she was incredibly perceptive. No one had ever described his power that way. But she was right. Being a Jinchuriki, even one at peace with his Biju, was an inherently lonely existence. A world of power no one else could ever truly understand. "Yeah, I guess it is," he admitted. He decided to take a chance, to offer a piece of himself to this quiet, sad girl. "I know what it's like. To have nothing inside you that you're scared of. Something that makes other people scared of you. Something that makes you feel like a monster." Her hand, holding the chocolate bar, froze midway to her mouth. Her head snapped toward him, her golden eyes wide with shock and a raw, unveiled vulnerability. It was the most emotion he had seen from her yet. For the first time, she wasn't looking at him like a potential threat or a powerful tool. She was looking at him with dawning, fragile recognition. "How?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "How did you know?" Naruto offered her a small, sad smile. It was a genuine smile, free of bravado or posturing. It was the smile of someone who understood. "Because I am one too," he said quietly. "And it takes a monster to know a monster." In the pale, alien moonlight, a tiny, fragile thread of understanding formed between the sage and the Nekomata, a bond forged not in power or politics, but in a shared and silent pain. It was the first real connection Naruto had made in this new, strange world, and for the first time since he'd been torn from his reality, he felt a flicker of something other than a desperate desire to go home. He felt a reason to stay. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Feathers of Black and Gold. The days that followed the Devil King's visit settled into a rhythm that was both mundane and utterly bizarre. Naruto found himself an unwilling resident of the Occult Research Club, a strange phantom haunting the edges of its members' lives. He wasn't one of them, not a part of their peerage, but he was a constant, undeniable presence. Mornings were often spent in the wide, grassy field behind the old schoolhouse, a space Rias had designated for training. "You're too stiff," Naruto said, sidestepping a lightning-fast sword thrust from Kiba. He didn't bother drawing a weapon, simply moving with an economy of motion that made the handsome knight look like he was swinging at smoke. "You telegraph every move, your heart decides to attack, and then you tell your body to do it. It should be one motion. It's easy for you to say," Kiba grunted, sweat beading on his brow as he launched into a furious combination of slashes and lunges. Each was a blur of silver, a testament to his demonic speed, and each met only empty air. "You move before I even think of attacking." Naruto flowed around him, a leaf on the wind. He tapped Kiba's exposed back with 2 fingers. A gentle touch that could have been a fatal blow. That's my point. You're thinking. A swordsman shouldn't think. He should just be. He gave a wry smile. Crazy. Eyed Cyclops Snake Man taught me that once. Kiba stumbled to a halt, panting, a look of frustrated admiration on his face. This man who fought without a sword understood the blade better than he did. Every spar was a lesson. And every lesson left him feeling like a novice. His afternoons were often interrupted by Akeno. She would appear with a tray of tea and snacks, her smile a mix of genuine warmth and playful seduction. Naruto-kun, you've been training so hard, she'd purr, her voice like honey and thunder. You must be thirsty. Today, he was sitting on the clubhouse steps, trying to patch a tear in his favorite jacket. When she arrived, he accepted the cup of tea with a grateful nod. You know, Akeno said, sitting beside him, her proximity sending a pleasant wave of her floral scent over him. A man with your power could have anything he wants in the underworld. Riches, titles, women, all you would have to do is ask. Her violet eyes sparkled with mischief. Or, you could simp. Allow a lovely lady to take care of you. Naruto took a sip of tea, considering her words. The flattery was obvious, but there was something else underneath it, a probing curiosity. He met her gaze, his own blue eyes direct and honest. I had all that once, he said, his voice quiet. The title, the respect, I was going to be the leader of my whole village. But it's just noise. What I want is to go home. And maybe find some decent ramen. He gave her a slight, lopsided grin. This instant stuff you have here is a criminal offense. Akeno blinked, caught off guard by his complete lack of guile. He wasn't rejecting her advance so much as sidestepping it entirely, focusing on something so simple and earnest it was disarming. A genuine laugh, clear and bright, escaped her. This man was true, like nothing she had ever encountered. His most peaceful moments were with Kaneko. She had taken to seeking him out, finding him on the roof or under the shade of a large tree. They rarely spoke. She would simply sit near him. Her presence a small, solid weight in the unfamiliar world, and they would share whatever snacks she had managed to procure. Today it was a bag of potato chips. He'd watch her nibble on one with the focused intensity of a cat, and he'd feel a small bit of the tension in his soul unwind. Her quiet companionship was a better anchor than any long conversation. Rias, however, remained a source of friction. She watched him, her arms crossed, her expression a constant battle between the calculating mind of a king and the frustrated pride of a Grimoire. She would issue commands disguised as suggestions. Naruto, we should run drills to see how your abilities can synergize with my own. He would respond without missing a beat, good idea. After you show me you can hit a moving target from 100 meters while Kiba and Kaneko are pressuring you. A king who can't fight on her own isn't a king, she's just a target. His challenges infuriated her, but she couldn't refute their logic. Worse, she found herself rising to them, pushing herself harder than ever before. He wasn't obeying her, but he was making her stronger, and the paradox was maddeningly intriguing. It was during one such tense afternoon that Naruto felt it. A subtle shift in the air. He was on the roof, attempting to meditate, to feel the flow of natural energy in this new world. It was strange here. Thin and listless compared to the vibrant life force of his homeland, but it was there. And now, it was being disturbed. A new energy signature was bleeding into the town, like a drop of poison in a glass of water. It was sharp, arrogant, and saturated with a cold, holy light that felt fundamentally wrong. It was also laced with an insatiable bloodlust. He stood up, his eyes scanning the horizon. Something's coming, he said to the empty air. Downstairs, his words proved prophetic. A frantic Rias burst into the main club room where the others were gathered. We have a problem. I just received a report from the Citri network. Multiple rogue priests have been spotted moving towards the old church on the edge of town. They're armed with light-based weaponry. Stray exorcists? Kiba asked, his hand instinctively going to his hip. What do they want in Kuo? I don't know, Rias admitted. But any unsanctioned use of holy power in this territory is a declaration of hostilities. Before they could plan their next move, the stained glass windows of the clubhouse exploded inward. Shards of colored glass rained down as 3 figures in white robes, their faces hidden by deep hoods, vaulted into the room. They moved with a chilling, synchronized grace, each brandishing a sword made of pure, solidified light. For the glory of the one true God. Death to the fiends of darkness. One of them shrieked, his voice raw with fanaticism. Kiba was a blur, his own demonic sword materializing to meet the first attacker's blade in a shower of sparks. Kaneko, with a grunt of effort, caught the second priest's sword on her crossed arms, the holy energy hissing against her skin as she was forced back a step. Akeno unleashed a bolt of lightning, forcing the third to dive out of the way. RIAS began gathering her power of destruction, but the attack was too sudden, too close quarters. Then, a flash of orange dropped from the ceiling, landing squarely between Rias and the third priest. Naruto didn't even look at the attacker. "You guys handle these two," he said calmly, his gaze fixed on the hole in the wall. "There's a bigger fish out there." The priest lunged, his light sword aimed at Naruto's back. Naruto didn't turn, he simply shot a hand backward, his fingers clamping around the priest's face. He lifted the man off the ground with one arm, ignoring his muffled screams, and casually tossed him out the window he'd just entered. "My lady," Kiba called out, parrying a furious strike. Their power is unusually high for strays. Naruto's senses were already stretched out over the town. The skirmish here was a distraction. The main concentration of that arrogant, malevolent power was converging on a single point, Kuo Academy. It was pulsing like a beacon, drawing power from the very land it was built on. "It's the school," Naruto announced, his voice cutting through the sounds of the fight. "They're targeting the school. This is just to keep us busy." Rias blasted the priest Kaneko was grappling with, sending him flying into a wall. The school rests on one of the most powerful spiritual nexuses in all of Japan. What could they possibly want with it? Nothing good, Naruto said, his expression grim. "Let's go." Night had fallen by the time they reached the academy. An oppressive, shimmering barrier of golden light enveloped the entire campus, humming with AP. Odor that made the devils hiss in discomfort. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and a cloying, artificial sanctity. As they passed through the main gate, pushing through the resistance of the barrier, they saw him. On the central plaza, lounging on a throne seemingly cobbled together from broken desks and chairs, was a man with 10 feathered wings of the deepest black sprouting from his back. He had long, dark hair and a handsome, cruel face that was contorted in a theatrical yawn of utter boredom. At his feet, a monstrous, three-headed dog the size of a truck lay sleeping, its snores like distant thunder. Several other figures, all bearing the black wings of fallen angels, stood arrayed behind him. "Ah, the little Grimoire princess has arrived," the man said, his voice dripping with condescending amusement. He sat up, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his lips. "And you brought your little pets. How quaint. I was beginning to think you wouldn't show." The boredom was becoming simply unbearable. "Kokobile," Rias snarled, her demonic power flaring around her. "A Cadre-class fallen angel. What is the meaning of this? This is Grimoire territory. You are violating the treaty." "Treaty?" Kokobile laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, that tedious little piece of paper. I'm afraid I've been using my copy for kindling. You see, I miss the old days. The thunder of heaven's armies, the screams of dying devils. The glorious, beautiful chaos of the Great War. It's been so dreadfully dull since Michael and the Devil Kings decided to play nice. So, I thought to myself, why not start it all again?" His eyes, burning with a feverish light, swept over them. "My plan is simple. I kill you and your little friends, along with the Citri heiress who is on her way here. The two great devil families lose their precious sisters on the same night. Searsex and Seraphol will have no choice but to retaliate. Azazel will be dragged in, Michael will be forced to respond, and boom." He threw his hands up in a gesture of explosive glee. "The grandest firework display in 1,000 years. And I'll have a front row seat." He was completely, utterly insane. His gaze then fell on Naruto, and he paused, his head tilting. "Now, what is this? You don't smell like a devil. You're not human, and you certainly aren't one of ours. Did you find a new species to enslave, Grimoire?" Before Naruto could answer, two more figures burst through the barrier. One was a young woman with blue hair, Zenobia Quarta, wielding a massive, ornate greatsword. The other was the familiar, cheerful face of Irina Shido, a childhood friend of Kiba's. Kokobile, Zenobia shouted, her voice ringing with the conviction of the church. In the name of God, you will answer for the theft of the Excaliburs and for the murder of our brethren. Kokobile just looked even more delighted. Devils and exorcists. Oh, it's a party. Wonderful. He snapped his fingers. A crazed-looking man with wild white hair, Fried Selzen, appeared, cackling as he brandished a holy sword that pulsed with erratic energy. The plaza erupted into chaos. Kiba, his expression a mask of cold fury, engaged Fried, their blades clashing in a shower of sparks. Rias, Akino, and Kaneko took on the monstrous Cerberus, which had woken with a tripartite roar that shook the ground. Zenobia and Irina battled against Kokobile's other lieutenants. Naruto remained still, his focus locked on the main threat. Kokobile was the head of the snake. Cut it off, and the body would die. But Kokobile's attention had shifted. His eyes, full of malicious glee, had found Akino as she rained down bolts of lightning on the thrashing Cerberus. A cruel smile twisted his lips. Well, what have we here? He crooned, his voice echoing across the plaza. I recognize that power. The blood of the Grigori runs strong in you. Barakiel's little girl, isn't it? Akino froze in midair, her attack faltering. Her face went pale. Oh, yes, Kokobile continued, savoring her reaction. The disgrace who fled her father's side for her filthy devil mother. Tell me, do you still cry yourself to sleep at night, wishing you could scrub the holy light from your veins? Or have you learned to enjoy being a mongrel? The word hit Akino like a physical blow. Her composure shattered. The playful, confident queen of the Grimoire peerage vanished, replaced by a frightened, haunted girl. Don't you dare speak to her that way, Rias roared, launching a massive blast of destructive energy at Kokobile. He simply waved a hand, erecting a barrier of golden light that absorbed the blast without effort. So protective, it's touching. He raised a finger, and a dozen spears of pure, holy light materialized in the air around him. Let's see how your precious queen handles a taste of her own heritage. The spears shot forward, aimed not to kill, but to torment. They flew directly at Akino. Instinct took over. She threw up her hands, and a crackling shield of heat. Our own holy lightning erupted to meet them. The impact sent a shockwave through her. It was like forcing two magnets of the same polarity together. The conflicting energies warred within her, causing her to cry out in pain. Her own power, the side of her she had despised for so long, was being turned against her. She faltered, her shield flickering. Another volley of spears materialized, larger and more menacing. Kokobile was laughing. He never got to launch them. A streak of orange lightning intercepted their path. Naruto appeared in front of the faltering Akino, his back to her. He didn't erect a barrier or try to dodge. He simply reached out and caught the lead spear of light in his bare hand. The holy energy sizzled against his skin, steam rising from his palm. But it didn't pierce him. His own chakra, a vibrant, living blue, flared to life, smothering the golden light, neutralizing it. With a simple flex of his fingers, the spear of light shattered into a million glittering motes. Kokobile's laughter died in his throat. His eyes widened slightly. What? You talk too much, Naruto said, his voice dangerously low. He turned his head slightly, his piercing blue eyes finding Akino's terrified violet ones. All that noise, just to hide how weak and empty you are. He's picking on you because he knows you're stronger than he'll ever be. He turned back to face the stunned fallen angel, his body radiating a quiet, deadly confidence. Listen to me, Akino, he said, his voice clear and firm, meant for her and her alone. Don't ever be ashamed of what you are. That power isn't holy or demonic. It's yours. It's a part of you. Own it. For Akino, it was as if the world had shifted on its axis. All her life, her mixed blood had been a source of shame and torment. Devils saw her as tainted. Fallen angels saw her as a disgrace. She saw herself as a monster. But this man, this stranger from another world, looked at all of her, the darkness and the light, and told her it was simply power. Her power, to be owned, to be wielded. A tear traced a path down her cheek, but it was not a tear of sorrow. A slow, predatory grin spread across Kokobile's face. So, the stray dog has fangs. Good. Excellent. This is exactly what I wanted. Show me, boy, show me the meaning of war. You want a war, Naruto said, cracking his neck. Fine. He clasped his hands together in a simple seal. But you're not ready for mine. And then, he unleashed his power. It was not a gradual build. It was an explosion. A torrent of incandescent golden chakra erupted from him, a pillar of raw energy that shot into the night sky. The oppressive holy atmosphere of Kokobeel's barrier was instantly shredded, blown away by a force that felt as vital and overwhelming as the sun itself. Naruto's form was enveloped in a searing golden cloak of energy, his whisker marks becoming thick and black, his blue eyes turning a feral, slitted gold. The sheer pressure of his presence brought every single fight on the field to a dead stop. Devils, exorcists, and fallen angels alike stared in a mixture of awe and absolute terror at the golden figure now radiating power on a scale they couldn't comprehend. Kokobeel's grin became ecstatic. Yes, this is it. This is the power that makes worlds tremble. He roared with laughter, summoning a storm of hundreds of light spears, a brilliant, deadly constellation that filled the sky above him. Naruto didn't even look at them. He held out his hand and a shadow clone appeared beside him in a puff of smoke. The two Narutos moved in perfect sync, one holding out his palm while the other poured energy into it. A sound tore through the air, a high-pitched, piercing shriek, like 1,000 blades grinding against a whetstone. A flat, spinning disk of chakra formed, surrounded by 4 massive, curving blades of pure wind. Wind style. Rasenshuriken. Let's see how you like this. Kokobeel screamed, bringing his arm down. The sky fell. The storm of light spears rained down. A cataclysm of holy power meant to obliterate the entire school grounds. Naruto threw the Rasenshuriken. It flew, not as a ball of energy, but as a miniature, screeching star of destruction. It did not meet the rain of light head-on. Instead, it shot through the gaps, closing the distance to Kokobeel in a fraction of a second. The fallen angel's eyes widened in disbelief. He had no time to erect a barrier. The Rasenshuriken slammed into him. There was a moment of absolute silence. Then, the shuriken detonated. It did not create a fireball. It expanded into a massive, swirling vortex of wind that engulfed Kokobeel entirely. Inside the sphere, a storm of uncountable microscopic chakra blades shredded everything on a cellular level. The sound was deafening, the shriek of the wind blades rising to an unbearable crescendo before the sphere imploded, collapsing in on itself with a final, thunderous boom. When the light and wind died down, there was a massive crater in the center of the plaza. Kokobeel lay in the bottom of it, his 10 black wings shredded into tattered ribbons, his body broken and smoking. He was alive, conscious, but utterly defeated. The arrogant light in his eyes was gone, replaced by the blank shock of a being who had just witnessed a power beyond his understanding of reality. The golden barrier around the academy shattered like glass. Naruto stood over the crater, his golden chakra cloak receding back into him until he was just a man in a tattered orange and black jacket again. The silence was absolute. Everyone, Rias, Kiba, Zenobia, Freed, stared at the scene. Their own battles completely forgotten. Akeno slowly drifted to the ground, her eyes never leaving Naruto's back. The fear and self-loathing that had crippled her moments ago had been scoured away, replaced by a profound, overwhelming wave of emotion. She walked towards him, her steps unsteady. He turned as she approached. She stopped in front of him, her violet eyes shining with unshed tears. The playful flirtation, the seductive mask, it was all gone. He was seeing the real Akeno Himehime for the first time. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with a gratitude so deep it was painful. Naruto-kun. Before he could respond, a new presence made itself known. A voice, calm and laced with a chilling excitement, echoed from the school rooftop. The chakra of the 9 tails. The power of a sage, so the old legends passed down in the dimensional gap were true after all. They all looked up. A figure stood silhouetted against the moon. He was clad in breathtakingly intricate, white and blue armor that seemed to be styled after a dragon. A pair of ethereal blue dragon wings sprouted from his back. The armored figure leapt from the roof, landing softly in the plaza. The helmet retracted, revealing a young man with silver hair and a confident, almost predatory smile. His eyes were locked on Naruto, burning with an intensity that made Kokobeel's insane glee seem tame. To think I'd find a being like you in a place like this, the newcomer said, his voice alight with anticipation. This is 1,000 times more interesting than the war Kokobile wanted. He spread his arms wide. A gesture of grand proclamation. My name is Valley Lucifer. And you, Naruto Uzumaki, are destined to be my greatest rival. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Uncaged Wings. The silence on the battlefield was a fragile, crystalline thing, shattered only by the ragged breathing of the combatants. Kokobile lay broken in his crater, a testament to a power none of them could properly comprehend. At the center of it all stood Naruto, the last vestiges of his golden chakra cloak dissipating like morning mist, leaving him looking deceptively ordinary. Valley Lucifer, the White Dragon Emperor, landed with the soundless grace of a predator. His draconic armor retracted with a series of soft clicks, revealing a young man whose silver hair and confident smirk radiated an almost tangible pressure. His eyes, however, were fixed on Naruto with an unnerving, predatory hunger. To think, Valley mused, his voice a low, excited murmur, that a power spoken of only in whispers within the dimensional gap would manifest here. You are an anomaly, Naruto Uzumaki, a beautiful, glorious anomaly. Get in line, Naruto replied flatly, his gaze wary. This newcomer's energy felt immense, a deep, placid ocean of power that hid a monstrous depth. It was controlled, refined, and potent. A true rival. Who are you? I am the descendant of the original Lucifer, Valley announced, a hint of pride in his tone. The wielder of the divine dividing. And as of this moment, I am the man who will one day surpass you. He gave a sharp, almost feral grin. But not today. Today is merely an introduction. A promise of a glorious battle to come. Before anyone could react, a complex magic circle materialized over the broken form of Kokobile. A calm, masculine voice echoed from it. Valley, that's enough. You've had your fun. A man's figure flickered into view within the circle. He was handsome, with black hair and golden bangs, wearing a casual trench coat. He looked more like a laid-back professor than a leader of a celestial faction. Azazel, Valley greeted, his tone losing none of its confidence. Come to clean up your mess. The Governor General of the Fallen Angels sighed, running a hand through his hair. One of my cadre goes rogue, steals Excaliburs, and tries to restart the Great War for his own amusement. It's a logistical nightmare. My apologies, everyone. His gaze fell on Naruto, and his eyes, ancient and incredibly intelligent, widened for a fraction of a second. Well now, this explains the power readings. You must be the Grimoire's new variable. Azazel made a gesture, and Kokobile's unconscious form, along with his remaining subordinates and the stolen Excalibur fragments, were lifted into the air by magical chains. I'll take him back to Grigori for re-education. And I believe these belong to the church. He sent the swords floating gently toward a stunned Zenobia and Irina. Again, my sincerest apologies for the trouble. Please, don't let this incident sour our current truce. With a final, deeply intrigued look at Naruto, Azazel's projection and all that he had summoned vanished. The plaza was suddenly empty, save for the heroes and the wreckage. Valley chuckled, always cleaning up. Well, this has been a marvelous appetizer. His gaze locked with Naruto's one last time. Grow stronger, sage of the six paths. The next time we meet, I will not be here just to talk. With a brilliant flash of blue light, his dragon wings reappeared, and he rocketed into the night sky, disappearing in an instant. The abrupt departure of the titanic powers left a vacuum, filled now by the dawning reality of what had just occurred. Akano was the first to move. She walked toward Naruto, her steps sure and steady. The haunted look was gone from her eyes, replaced by a warm, radiant light. She stopped before him, and without a word, she reached out and gently took his hand. Her skin was warm, and a faint, pleasant crackle of lightning danced over her fingertips. She didn't flirt, she didn't tease, she simply held his hand, her grip firm, and gave him a smile so genuine and full of gratitude it was more stunning than any of her spells. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she said again, her voice soft but unwavering. You gave me back a part of myself I thought I had to hate forever. Naruto, unused to such open, heartfelt sincerity, felt a warmth spread through his chest. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. It was always yours, he said simply. You just had to decide to use it. Rias watched the exchange, a storm of emotions churning within her. Relief, awe, gratitude, and a sharp, unfamiliar pang of something she couldn't name as Akino held Naruto's hand. She pushed it down. Everyone, she called out, her voice regaining its command. Let's go home. We have a lot to discuss. The next day, the mood in the occult research club was somber. The broken windows had been magically repaired, but the memory of the night's battle lingered. Sears Lucifer was there, seated on the sofa. Graphia standing silently behind him. He had listened to Rias's full report without interruption, his expression placid, but his violet eyes held a deep, thoughtful gravity. Kokobeel's folly has been averted, thanks to you. Naruto-kun, Sears said, his gaze respectful. You have prevented a war that would have cost countless lives. The entire underworld owes you a debt. Naruto, leaning against a wall with his arms crossed, just shrugged. I just stopped a crazy guy from hurting my friends. That's all. The simple, unadorned word, friends, hung in the air. It resonated deeply with Rias and her peerage. He saw them as friends. Not as masters, not as clients, not as devils. Friends. Be that as it may, Sears continued, this event has accelerated matters. The elders of the Phi Next clan are displeased with the instability in this region. They are insisting the engagement be finalized immediately. They see it as a way to stabilize their interests here. Rias's face hardened. It's a power grab, nothing more. They want control of this territory's spiritual nexus. Precisely, Sears agreed, which is why we cannot delay any longer. The rating game is set for 2 days from now. A heavy silence fell over the room. 2 days. It felt like a death sentence. Riser Phoenix is a high-class devil with a full peerage, Kiba said, his voice grim. And he cannot be killed. The Phoenix clan possesses the power of regeneration, Sears explained for Naruto's benefit. It is said to be akin to the mythical phoenix. Any wound, no matter how grievous, heals in moments. Riser is particularly gifted. In a battle of attrition, he is virtually unbeatable. So he's an arrogant, immortal scumbag, Naruto summarized, pushing himself off the wall. He looked at Rias, at the trapped, defiant look in her eyes. It was the same look he'd seen in so many others, the look of someone whose destiny was being decided for them by forces they couldn't control. And you're all Jew, Saint going to play this game for her future. It is the way of our world, Graphia stated, her voice devoid of emotion. A civilized, structured method for resolving disputes among the nobility. Naruto scoffed, a short, harsh sound of disbelief. Civilized. You're putting a leash on a woman and calling the process civilized. You don't play a game for someone's freedom. That's not a dispute to be resolved. It's a right to be defended. His words struck a chord. Rias looked at him, her eyes wide. He wasn't talking about strategy or power levels. He was talking about the fundamental injustice of her situation. Something everyone else accepted as a political reality. Naruto, she started, her voice barely a whisper. He walked to the center of the room, his gaze sweeping over all of them. I'm not playing any game. I'm not a chess piece. My deal with you, he looked at Sears, was that I would help her win her freedom. That's what I'm going to do. Just then, the air in the room grew hot. The scent of cinnamon and ash filled their nostrils, and a pillar of brilliant orange fire erupted in the middle of the floor. When the flames subsided, a group of figures stood there. At their lead was a young man with short blonde hair, dressed in an ostentatious red suit. His handsome face was marred by a sneer of supreme arrogance. This was Riser Phoenix. Behind him stood his peerage, a full complement of 15 pieces. Mostly comprised of beautiful, subservient-looking women. Riser has heard that his sweet Rias has been entertaining commoners, the man said, his voice smooth and condescending. He let his gaze drift over Kiba and Kaneko with disdain, linger on Akino with undisguised lust, and then finally land on Naruto. He wrinkled his nose. And what is this? Did you pick up a stray pet, my dear? Rias's hands clenched into fists, her demonic aura flaring. Riser, this is my clubhouse. You were not invited. Oh, but everything that is yours will soon be Riser's, he said with a lecherous grin. Riser has simply come to collect what is his. The game is a formality. Let us not waste time and proceed to the wedding night, shall we? He started to walk toward her, his peerage fanning out behind him. Graphia stepped forward, her power flaring like a blast of arctic cold that stopped the fiery devil in his tracks. Lord Phoenix, the formal rating game is in 2 days. You will adhere to the agreed-upon rules. Quote, Riser's eyes narrowed, but he didn't challenge the strongest queen. Instead, his gaze fell back on Naruto, who hadn't moved an inch. And who is this one? He doesn't smell like one of your servants. Rias, he's an ally, Rias said through gritted teeth. An ally, Riser laughed, a full-throated, mocking sound. This thing, Rias, your taste is appalling. Riser will have to teach you the value of true nobility. He waved a dismissive hand at Naruto. Pet, bow before you're better. You stand in the presence of Riser Phoenix, heir to a great house. Naruto was silent for a long moment. He met Riser's arrogant gaze with a look of utter, profound boredom. Then, he spoke, his voice calm and carrying through the tense room. Let's get something straight, Naruto said, his tone deceptively mild. First, I don't bow to anyone. Second, you're not her owner, so stop talking like you are. And third, he took a single step forward, and the atmosphere in the room shifted. It became heavy, charged. You're not leaving this room with her. Riser's amusement turned to indignant rage. You dare speak to Riser in such a manner. I am a Phoenix. I am a mortal. I will burn you too. Forget the game. Naruto cut him off, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous level. You and me, right here, right now. The entire room went dead silent. Even Sirzex looked intrigued. What did you say? Riser hissed. You heard me, Naruto said, uncrossing his arms. You think you're worthy of her. You think you're strong. Prove it. You want her. You have to go through me. If you win, you can have your game. You can have whatever you want. But if I win, Naruto's blue eyes hardened into chips of ice. You walk away. You cancel the engagement. You never bother her or her friends ever again. And you tell your great house that Rias Grimori is off limits. Riser stared at him, dumbfounded, before bursting into laughter again, louder and more hysterical this time. You, a nameless nobody, challenges Riser Phoenix himself. You wish for a duel. The arrogance. The sheer, suicidal arrogance. He wiped a tear of mirth from his eye. Fine. Riser accepts. It will be a pleasure to burn your insignificant corpse to ashes and show my future bride the price of defiance. Brother. No. Rias cried out, taking a step toward Naruto. You can't. He's immortal. You'll. Naruto held up a hand, silencing her without looking back. Stay out of this, Rias. This isn't your fight anymore. It's mine. He turned his full attention back to Riser. No rules. No time limit. It's over when one of us can't fight anymore. It will be over when your ashes are scattered on the floor. Riser roared, his body bursting into flames. His peerage quickly retreated to the walls of the room, creating a makeshift arena. Sirzex and Graphia simply observed, their expressions unreadable. The fight began. Riser was a torrent of fire. He launched massive fireballs, waves of flame, and searing jets of heat, turning the center of the clubhouse into a raging inferno. He was fast, powerful, and utterly relentless. Naruto was none of those things. He was simply not there. He moved with an effortless grace, the flames parting around him as if he were made of water. He sidestepped fireballs, weaved under jets of flame, and flowed around searing explosions. He made Riser, a high-class devil, look like a clumsy child throwing a tantrum. With every missed attack, Riser's frustration grew. Stand still and be incinerated, you insect. He bellowed. No, thanks, Naruto replied, appearing directly behind him. Before Riser could turn, Naruto drove a simple, chakra-enhanced punch into his kidney. It wasn't a devastating blow, but it was precise and brutally effective. Riser grunted in pain, stumbling forward. He healed instantly, the flicker of flame sealing the internal damage, but the phantom pain remained. He spun around, swinging a fist wreathed in fire. Naruto ducked under it and swept Riser's legs out from under him. As the Phoenix air fell, Naruto delivered a sharp axe kick to his chest, slamming him into the floorboards with enough force to crack them. Again, Riser healed, rising to his feet in a burst of flame, his face a mask of fury. Is that all you have? Riser cannot be beaten by mere physical attacks. Who said I was trying to beat you? Naruto said, a dozen shadow clones popping into existence around him. I'm just getting warmed up. The clones attacked. It was a masterclass in humiliation. They didn't try to overpower Riser, they toyed with him. They pulled his hair, tripped him, threw books at his head, and landed hundreds of small, irritating, painful blows all over his body. Riser roared, unleashing massive explosions of fire that vaporized the clones. But for every one he destroyed, 2 more would take its place, appearing from the smoke to land another stinging kick or punch. He was fighting a hydra of disrespect. His peerage watched in stunned silence. Their invincible master was being made a fool of. Rias and her friends were equally mesmerized. They had never seen a fight like this. It was less of a battle and more of a systematic dismantling of a person's ego. Finally, Riser had enough. Enough, he screamed, his power exploding outward in a massive nova of fire that incinerated every clone and scorched the walls of the room. He floated in the center of the blast, panting, his eyes glowing with rage. No more games, you peasant. Riser will show you the true power of the Phoenix. He raised his hands, and the flames around him coalesced into a massive, swirling vortex of orange fire. This will reduce you to nothing. The real Naruto, who had been watching from the rafters, dropped down in front of him. My turn. He made a single hand seal. Wind style. Great breakthrough. He inhaled deeply and exhaled a hurricane. A tremendous, focused blast of wind erupted from his mouth, far more powerful than the simple jutsu's name implied. It was a gale force that slammed into Riser's fire vortex. For a moment, the two forces battled, a swirling maelstrom of wind and fire filling the room. But wind feeds fire, and Naruto's technique was designed to control and scatter. The vortex was shredded, the flames blown back in Riser's face, singeing his hair and clothes. The gale sent him tumbling back, slamming him into the far wall. He healed, of course, but he was shaken. His ultimate attack had been brushed aside. He looked at Naruto, who now stood before him, his expression unchanged. For the first time, a flicker of fear entered Riser's eyes. You've relied on your 2 tricks for too long, Naruto said, his voice quiet but carrying an immense weight. Fire and healing. You've never had to really fight, have you? You've never had to push past your limits, because you thought you didn't have any. Naruto closed his eyes. The air around him grew still. A new kind of energy began to flow into him, a power that felt ancient, primal, and overwhelmingly potent. It was the energy of the world itself. Pigmentation, a bold orange color, appeared around his eyes, and his pupils shifted into the horizontal bars of a toad. He had entered Sage mode. The difference was staggering. His presence, which was already formidable, became mountainous. He didn't radiate power like Riser or Rias. He was power, a perfect conduit of natural force. Let me show you what a real limit feels like, Naruto said, opening his eyes. He vanished. He didn't use a jutsu. His speed, enhanced by Sage mode, was simply too fast for Riser to track. The Phoenix air felt a blow to his stomach that was so powerful it felt like he'd been hit by a train. All the air was driven from his lungs. He doubled over, gasping, and the orange flames of his regeneration flickered desperately to heal the catastrophic internal damage. Before he could recover, another blow, a brutal hammer fist, crashed down on his back, driving him to his knees. Then came another, and another. It was a storm of attacks, each one landing with the force of an explosion. Naruto was a blur of orange and black, his fists and feet striking with perfect, devastating precision. Riser's regeneration was working overtime, the flames enveloping his body, but it couldn't keep up. For every wound that closed, 2 more were opened. He was being broken faster than he could heal. The pain was absolute, overwhelming his senses. He tried to fight back, swinging wildly, but his attacks were clumsy, desperate. Naruto moved around them with contemptuous ease. His sage-enhanced senses predicting Riser's every move before he even made it. Stop! Riser gasped, blood and fire spewing from his mouth. Please. Naruto stopped. He stood before the kneeling, broken form of Riser Phoenix. The immortal devil was a wreck, his fine suit torn to shreds, his body flickering between wounded and healed states, trembling uncontrollably. The arrogance was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. "Do you yield?" Naruto asked, his voice calm. I am Riser Phoenix," he stammered, trying to summon some last shred of pride. "I am immortal," Naruto sighed. He raised a fist, which began to glow with the serene, overwhelming power of natural energy. "Immortality doesn't mean you can't feel pain. I can keep this up all day. I can break every bone in your body, rupture every organ. And then wait for you to heal just so I can do it all over again. I can make you experience 1,000 lifetimes of agony before the sun sets." Or, he paused, his glowing fist hovering inches from Riser's face. "You can surrender." Riser looked into Naruto's sage eyes, eyes that held no malice, no anger, only an implacable, absolute will. He saw an eternity of pain reflected there. His pride shattered, his spirit broke. "I yield," he whispered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "I surrender." Naruto lowered his fist, the orange pigmentation around his eyes fading as he released Sage Mode. He turned his back on the defeated devil. Riser's peerage stared, their faces a mixture of horror and disbelief. Their master, their immortal lord, had been broken. Sirzex watched, a slow, thoughtful smile playing on his lips. This was more than he could have ever hoped for. Graphia's eyes were wide, a crack in her perfect, stoic facade. Naruto walked past Rias, not even looking at her. He stopped at the door, turning back to look at the stunned Ramori peerage. "He won't bother you again," he said. And then he walked out, leaving a stunned silence and the scent of victory in his wake. Rias watched him go, her heart hammering against her ribs. He hadn't just defeated Riser. He had fought for her. Not for her family name, not for a deal, but for her. He had looked at the cage the world had built around her and, with his bare hands, he had torn it apart. In that moment, watching his retreating back, Rias Ramori, heiress of a great demonic house, felt her carefully constructed world shift. Realigning itself around the blonde-haired man from another world. He had not been summoned as her familiar. He had arrived as her salvation. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Fox's Gambit. The aftermath of Riser's defeat was a strange and unfamiliar piece. The looming threat of the engagement had vanished, and a lightness had settled over the Occult Research Club. It was a peace personified by Naruto, who spent most of the following day sleeping in, sprawled on the main room's sofa with a complete lack of decorum, snoring softly. The others moved around him, speaking in hushed tones, unwilling to wake the man who had single-handedly torn down the walls of Rias's cage. Akano would occasionally place a fresh blanket over him, her smile softer and more genuine than ever before. Kaneko would leave a small plate of cookies on the table beside his head, a silent offering of thanks. Even Kiba looked at the sleeping blonde with a newfound reverence, seeing not just a powerhouse, but a teacher who had shown him the value of instinct over technique. Rias, however, found it impossible to look away. She sat in her presidential chair, pretending to read a book, but her eyes kept drifting back to him. She replayed the duel in her mind. The casual confidence, the strategic humiliation of an immortal, the raw, terrifying power of his Sage Mode, and most importantly, the PLE declaration that it was his fight now. He had taken her burden and shattered it without asking for anything in return. The debt she owed him felt immeasurable, a strange and wonderful weight in her chest. Their quiet morning was interrupted by a flash of brilliant blue light and a cascade of shimmering sparkles. A magic circle, emblazoned with the crest of the House of Citri, appeared on the floor. From it emerged Sona Citri, her usual stern expression firmly in place. Beside her, however, was a woman who was her polar opposite. Dressed in a frilly, pink magical girl costume complete with a star-tipped wand. She radiated an aura of hyperactive, almost weaponized cheerfulness. Her long black hair was tied in twin tails, and her eyes sparkled with an energy that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "Ria-tan," the woman squealed, her voice a high-pitched melody of pure excitement. She zipped across the room in a blur, enveloping a stunned Rias in a hug that lifted her off the floor. "I heard what happened. You kicked that crispy chicken boy to the curb. Sudan is so proud of you." "Seraphal. Let go. Can't breathe," Rias choked out, her face turning a shade of red that clashed with her hair. Sona adjusted her glasses, a long-suffering sigh escaping her lips. Sister, please try to maintain a level of decorum befitting a devil king. Seraphal Leviathan, one of the 4 great Satans, finally released Rias, striking a triumphant pose with her wand. Nonsense, Sona Tan. Decorum is for boring meetings. This is a time for celebration. Her impossibly energetic gaze then fell on the sleeping Naruto. Her eyes widened, and a gasp of pure delight escaped her. Ooh, is this him? Is this the handsome mystery man who saved my bestie's little sister? Before anyone could stop her, she was hovering over the sofa. He's even cuter when he's sleeping. He looks so strong and reliable. She poked his cheek with the tip of her wand. Boop. Naruto's eyes snapped open. For a fraction of a second, the raw, untamed instinct of a warrior who had slept on battlefields and survived assassination attempts took over. His hand shot up, grabbing the wand inches from his face, his grip like steel. The air grew cold, and a flicker of red flashed in his blue eyes. Seraphal froze, her cheerful smile faltering for the first time. She wasn't feeling killing intent, but she was feeling the co-eyelid power of something that could level a city before its first cup of tea. It was like poking a sleeping dragon. Naruto blinked, the sleep clearing from his mind. He saw the ridiculous costume, the shocked expression, and the star-tipped wand in his hand. He let go, sitting up and rubbing the back of his neck. Sorry, he mumbled. Bad habit. Seraphal quickly recovered, her megawatt smile returning. Wow, such fast reflexes. You're amazing. I'm Seraphal Leviathan, Sona Tan's super cute big sister and also a devil king. It's a pleasure to meet you. Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, he replied, still trying to process the sheer amount of energy this woman was emitting. Now, to business, Seraphal announced, clapping her hands together. Searsex-chan and I had a little chat. With Riser out of the picture, things are politically delicate. But we think we've come up with the perfect solution. A fun, friendly, totally not political at all rating game between the Grimoire Peerage and the Sea-Tree Peerage. Sona nodded, pushing her glasses up her nose. My sister's enthusiasm aside, she is correct. A friendly match would serve several purposes. It would demonstrate the strength and stability of the Grimoire household, showcasing that Rias's victory was not a fluke. It would allow my peerage to gather valuable combat data on a unique power like your own, Uzumaki-san. And, she added, a faint, competitive gleam in her eyes, it would be an excellent opportunity to settle which of our peerages is truly the superior tactical unit. Rias looked intrigued. Her team was stronger now, more confident. A match against her rival, Sona, would be the perfect test. I accept, she said, a determined smile on her face. Great, Seraphal chirped. The game will be held in a custom-made pocket dimension. The field will be a perfect replica of Kuo Academy and the surrounding town. Standard rules apply. The game ends when one king is eliminated or surrenders. Let's do it. Now. She tapped her wand on the floor. The world dissolved in a swirl of blue and pink light. When their vision cleared, they were standing in a vast, empty chamber that resembled a sports arena's viewing box. Below them, visible through a massive pane of transparent energy, was their town, recreated in stunning detail. Sona and her peerage stood on one side of the room, Rias and hers on the other. All right, teams. Seraphal's voice boomed from unseen speakers. Take your positions on the teleportation pads. The game begins in 5 minutes. As her peerage stepped onto their designated circle, Rias turned to Naruto. What's our strategy? Naruto stretched, a series of pops echoing from his spine. You're the king. You should be making the plan. I am, she replied, her gaze firm and trusting. And, my plan is to appoint you as our field commander. I may be the king, but you are the general. I've seen you fight. You see things we don't. We'll follow your lead. Kiba, Akano, and Kaneko all nodded in agreement. Naruto looked at their faces, at the unconditional trust they were placing in him. It was a heavy, familiar weight. All right, he said, a slow, confident grin spreading across his face. If I'm the commander, we're doing this my way. Forget what you know about rating games. Today, you're all going to learn how to be shinobi. The game began. All pieces, begin engagement. Sona's crisp, clear voice echoed through her peerage's telepathic link. She stood in her command post, a perfect replica of the student council room, observing a series of floating magical screens that showed her the entire battlefield. Tsubaki, you're with me. Saji, you are the vanguard. Draw their attention at the school's main gate. Ruruko, Tomo, take up sniper positions in the clock tower. Rhea, Yura, begin setting water traps around all major intersections. Tsubasa, Momo, patrol the perimeter. I want them contained, analyzed, and dismantled. Her plan was a model of tactical efficiency. She would control the terrain, dictate the flow of the battle, and use her peerage's superior coordination to systematically eliminate the Grimoire pieces, who she knew relied more on individual power than teamwork. She had analyzed Naruto's previous fights. He was a close-quarters powerhouse with some kind of energy projection and a cloning ability. She would isolate him, trap him with Rhea's water magic which would sap his stamina, and then overwhelm him. It was logical, it was precise, it was perfect, and it fell apart in the first 30 seconds. All units, listen up, Naruto's voice said in the minds of the Grimoire team. They were huddled in the school's gymnasium, their starting point. Forget vanguard, forget rearguard. First, we blind them. He made a single hand seal. Shadow clone jutsu. The gymnasium was instantly filled with a sea of orange. Hundreds upon hundreds of Naruto Uzumakis appeared, a chaotic, chattering army. All right, you guys know the drill. The original Naruto shouted over the din. Spread out. I want a clone on every roof, in every classroom, down every alley. Touch everything, test everything, report everything, and most importantly, make a whole lot of noise. The clones roared in agreement and then burst out of the gymnasium, scattering in every direction like a tidal wave of mischief. Sona's command center was instantly flooded with chaos. President, I have a visual. Uzumaki is on the clock tower. Tomo, her knight, reported. Negative, I have him at the main gate, engaging Saji. Tsubasa, her rook, countered. Wait, he's on the roof of the old schoolhouse. He's in the chemistry lab. He just ran past me, cackling and juggling 3 tennis balls. Sona stared at her screens, her perfect composure cracking. They were everywhere. Her meticulo, sly-laid traps were being sprung by grinning clones who would disappear in a puff of smoke. Her snipers couldn't get a lock. Her patrols were chasing ghosts. Her intelligence network, the cornerstone of her strategy, was being overwhelmed by a flood of useless, contradictory data. He is attempting to sow chaos to break our formation, Sona stated, her voice tight. All units, ignore the clones. Focus on finding the one with the highest energy signature. That will be the original. Meanwhile, the real Grimoire team was on the move. Kaneko, Naruto's voice directed. A clone has pinpointed one of their bishops in the 3rd floor music room. She's setting up some kind of magic circle. You're silent, you're strong. Get above her. Wait for my signal. The small rook nodded, melting into the shadows of the school hallway. Kiba, their pawn, Saji, is making a lot of noise at the main gate. He's trying to draw us in. I want you to give him what he wants. But you won't be alone. A dozen clones appeared beside the handsome knight. These guys will run interference. Your target is their rook, the one with the shield. She's protecting him. Create an opening, get past her, and take him out. Be a scalpel, not a hammer. Kiba grinned, a flash of excitement in his eyes. With pleasure. Akeno, Naruto continued, turning to his queen. You're our big gun. Stay with me. Sona is a water user. She's going to try and control the environment. When she makes her move, I want you to be ready to turn the sky into a thunderstorm. The Grimoire team moved like a well-oiled machine, each member guide ed by a constant stream of intel from the omnipresent clones. Kiba and his clone squadron engaged Saji and the rook Tsubasa. The clones were weak, but they were a nightmare to fight, coming from all angles, forcing the C-Tree members to defend constantly, unable to mount a proper offense. In the chaos, the real Kiba, moving at God's speed, slipped past Tsubasa's guard and tapped a stunned Saji on the back of the neck with the flat of his sword. C-Tree pawn, retired, the announcer's voice echoed. Tsubasa roared in frustration as Kiba and the clones vanished. At the same time, high above the music room, Kaneko waited. Below, the C-Tree bishop was chanting, her magic circle nearing completion. Now, Naruto's voice whispered in her mind. Kaneko dropped. She smashed through the ceiling, landing behind the shocked bishop and delivering a single, precise chop to her neck. The girl crumpled without a sound. C3 Bishop, retired. Sona slammed her fist on her console. Impossible. He's coordinating them perfectly. Where is he getting his intelligence? She scanned her screens, her eyes narrowing. He was using the clones not just as diversions, but as a sensory network that covered the entire battlefield. He wasn't just commanding the Grimoire team, he was seeing through 100 pairs of eyes at once. President, I have a lock. Her queen, Tsubaki Shinra, announced from beside her. The gymnasium. One signature is radiating significantly more power than the others. It must be the original. All remaining units, converge on the gymnasium. Sona commanded, a ruthless glint in her eyes. Trap him. Eliminate him. End this now. The remaining C3 peerage members, 5 of them, including the powerful queen, stormed the gymnasium. They found him standing in the center of the basketball court, waiting. He was glowing with a faint golden aura. You found me, Naruto said with a grin. Your chaotic strategy ends here, Tsubaki declared, her sacred gear, a mirror that could reflect any attack, shimmering in her hand. The 5 C3 members attacked as one. Water dragons, sword strikes, and magical blasts filled the air. Naruto met them head-on. He was a whirlwind of motion, dodging, parrying, and landing powerful blows. The fight was intense, a stunning display of power. He single-handedly held off 5 elite opponents. In her command post, Sona watched, her knuckles white. It was working. He was contained. He was powerful, but he was pinned. Now, Rhea, flood the gymnasium. From outside, her bishop began to chant, and a massive torrent of water smashed through the windows, flooding the gym. The water would restrict his movements, sap his strength. It was the perfect trap. But as the water swirled around Naruto's feet, he just kept grinning. You fell for it. Sona's blood ran cold. The Naruto in the gym, the one radiating all that power, looked up at the ceiling and gave a thumbs up before disappearing in a puff of smoke. It was a clone. A very, very powerful and convincing clone. But a clone nonetheless. What? Sona breathed. C3 Bishop, retired. C3 Rook, retired. C3 Knight, retired. The announcer's voice was a death knell. While her entire remaining force was focused on a decoy, Rias, Akeno, and the real Naruto had moved. Akeno had unleashed a massive bolt of holy lightning from above, taking out the preoccupied water mage Rhea. The others been systematically picked off by Rias's destructive power, guided by Naruto's pinpoint directions. Sona was in shock. Her forces were decimated. It was just her and Tsubaki now. Where is he? She whispered. Right behind you. Sona and Tsubaki spun around. Standing in the doorway of the student council room were Naruto and Rias. They hadn't busted down the door. They hadn't made a dramatic entrance. They had just walked in. All of Sona's sensors, all of her guards, all of her attention had been focused on a brilliant, masterful feint. A king should never leave her throne unguarded, Naruto said, his friendly grin a stark contrast to the utter devastation of Sona's strategy. Sona looked at Naruto, then at Rias, who was preparing a final, powerful blast. She saw the checkmate. With a deep breath that carried the weight of her defeat, she raised a hand. Sona C3, surrender. The winner of this match is the House of Grimoire. Seraphal's voice boomed, full of pride. The world dissolved again, and they were back in the viewing chamber. Sona C3 walked directly up to Naruto, her peerage looking dejected behind her. She bowed stiffly from the waist. Your strategy was unconventional, she said, her voice tight with a mixture of frustration and intellectual respect. You turned the entire battlefield into your own personal nervous system. My logic-based approach could not account for such elegant chaos. I concede my defeat. You were a brilliant tactician, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, a little embarrassed by the formal praise. Thanks. You're pretty sharp yourself. You almost had me with that water trap idea. A rare, small smile touched Sona's lips. Next time, I will. It was a moment of good-natured sportsmanship, of a rivalry forged in respect. A moment shattered by the piercing shriek of tearing reality. The lights in the chamber flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. The pocket dimension groaned, the very air vibrating with a hostile power. Before anyone could react, 5 golden magic circles, intricate and radiating a cold, sterile light utterly alien to them, burned themselves into existence on the floor. From each circle, a figure rose. They were clad head to toe in seamless white and gold armor, their faces obscured by featureless, angelic visors. They held swords forged of pure, solidified light, and their presence was a suffocating wave of fanatical, unwavering purpose. They felt no fear, no hesitation, only a chilling, zealous conviction. Demonic filth, the lead figure stated, its voice a synthesized, emotionless chorus. Your existence is a blight upon this world. Who are you? Rias demanded, her power flaring. The others, exhausted from the game, scrambled into defensive stances. We are the judgment of heaven. We are the celestial aegis, the angel declared. Our sacred duty is to purify the unclean. Without another word, they attacked. They moved with a terrifying, synchronized grace that made the C3 peerage's coordination look like a clumsy rehearsal. One angel engaged Kiba and Tsubaki, its light sword easily parrying both their blades at once, the holy energy making Kiba's demonic sword smoke and hiss. Another fired a volley of light javelins that forced Saji and Kaneko to scramble for cover. They were overwhelmingly powerful, their tactics brutally efficient and designed specifically to counter demonic physiology. One of them pointed its palm at Akeno, and a beam of golden fire erupted, a flame that seemed to burn the very magic out of the air. Akeno erected a lightning shield, but the holy fire clung to it, eating away at her defenses. They were outmatched. They were exhausted. This wasn't a game. This was an execution. The lead angel ignored the others, its blank visor fixed on Naruto. Anomaly. Your presence is a corruption of the natural order. You are a vessel of an unnatural, chaotic power. By the will of the Archangel Zerachiel, you will be cleansed. It shot forward, its speed rivaling Kiba's, its sword a streak of lethal light aimed directly at Naruto's heart. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He didn't have time to gather nature energy. He didn't have time for clones. He just acted. He met the attack head-on, his hand, now coated in a thin layer of Kurama's bubbling red chakra, clamping down on the blade of pure light. The holy energy and demonic chakra exploded on contact. A shower of red and gold sparks. The aegis was blown back a step, its perfect form momentarily disrupted by the raw, violent power of a tailed beast. It looked at its sword, WH. It now had a handprint seared into the blade, the red energy still corroding its holy light. Resistance is futile, the angel droned, its squadron pressing their advantage against the weakened devils. Your chaos will be brought to order. Quote, you want order. Naruto growled, his pupils shifting into red slits. The red chakra began to bubble more violently around him, forming a nascent, single tail of pure energy. My friends are hurt. You've got about 5 seconds to get out of here before I show you what real chaos looks like. The lead angel tilted its head, processing his threat. Threat level reassessment required. The anomaly's power exceeds projections. It raised its sword. All units, tactical withdrawal. The Seraph's will is patient. The purge is inevitable. In a flash of golden light as sudden as their arrival, the 5 angels vanished. They left behind a wrecked viewing room, several injured devils, and a silence thick with a new and terrifying dread. The friendly game was over. A real war, against an enemy they didn't understand, had just begun. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. Echoes of the First Night. The transition from the pocket dimension back to the occult research club was jarring. One moment, they were surrounded by the phantom wreckage of their simulated battle. The next, they were back in the familiar, wood-paneled room, the scent of Akeno's tea lingering in the air. The adrenaline of the game and the subsequent shock of the angelic attack left a sour, metallic taste in Naruto's mouth. The others were in a similar state, their post-game exhaustion now compounded by a chilling, visceral fear. What in the underworld was that? Kiba asked, leaning heavily against a bookshelf, his hand still resting on the HT of his sword as if the phantoms of their attackers might reappear. Sona, ever the analyst, was already pacing, her face pale but her mind clearly working. Their movements were too precise. Their power was uniform. It was like fighting 5 identical weapons, not 5 individuals. And the holy power they wielded, it was purer, more concentrated than anything I've ever encountered from heaven. Seraphal had dropped her bubbly magical girl persona entirely. In its place was the cold, sharp authority of a devil king. Her eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, were now like chips of ice. Zealots, she said, her voice low and hard. A militant faction that has splintered from the Seraphs, command. Sirzex and Michael have been monitoring them. We believed them to be a minor political annoyance, a group of fanatics spouting rhetoric. We nay. Veer imagined they possessed this level of power or organization. They called themselves the Celestial Aegis, Rias murmured, sinking into her chair. She looked at Naruto. They came for you. They called you an anomaly. Naruto met her gaze, his own expression grim. They called you filth. They were here to wipe you all out. I was just a target of opportunity. He flexed the hand he'd used to block the angel's sword. A faint, tingling numbness remained. The holy power of this world was a nasty, corrosive thing, fundamentally opposed to the demonic chakra of Kurama he'd used to block it. He glanced around the room, his senses taking stock of his friends. Rias was shaken but resolute. Akano was watching him, a quiet worry in her eyes. Kiba was on edge, but Kaneko, she was too still. She had retreated into herself. Her small form curled up on the edge of the sofa, her golden eyes wide and distant. The overwhelming holy aura of their attackers had clearly affected her more deeply, a painful echo against her Nekomata senses. Sirzex and the other Satans must be notified immediately, Seraphal declared, already tracing a communication circle in the air. Sona, come, we will brief the Citri clan. She gave Rias a final, serious look. Ria-tan, strengthen the defenses on your home. This was a probe, a test. They will be back. With a final, concerned glance at Naruto, the two sisters vanished in a flash of blue light, leaving the Grimoire peerage alone in the heavy silence. Sleep was a luxury Naruto couldn't afford that night. The Grimoire estate, a sprawling Western-style mansion that served as their clubhouse and home, was protected by a dizzying array of demonic wards and barriers. Rias had assured him it was one of the safest places in the human world. But Naruto learned long ago that no fortress was impenetrable. Safety was an illusion you fought to maintain every single day. He sat in the massive, darkened kitchen, the moonlight filtering through the large windows. He couldn't shake the unease coiling in his gut. The angels were a problem, a big one, but their attack felt open. It was a declaration of war. What worried him more were the enemies you didn't see coming. Giving up on sleep, he decided to do something productive. He rummaged through the kitchen, finding flour, eggs, and some salted pork. He was going to make ramen. Real ramen, from scratch. It was a disaster. His dough was too sticky, his broth was bland, and he nearly set a dish towel on fire. The chattering of his clones, who he'd summoned to help chop vegetables, only added to the chaos. Boss, you're supposed to knead it, not punch it into submission. One clone complained. More salt. It tastes like dishwater. Another chimed in, before being dispelled by a flick to the forehead from the original. A soft sound from the doorway made him turn. Kaneko stood there in her pajamas, a small white shadow in the gloom. She was holding a carton of milk, her expression as unreadable as ever. But the tension in her small shoulders was palpable. Couldn't sleep? Naruto asked, dismissing his grumbling clones with a wave of his hand. She shook her head, her gaze falling on the culinary wreckage. What are you doing? Attempting to create a masterpiece, he said with a wry grin, gesturing to the pot of questionable broth. Failing spectacularly. Want some? She gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. She poured herself a glass of milk and sat at the large kitchen island, watching him. The silence between them was comfortable, familiar. That thing you did, she said quietly, after a few minutes. In the game, the clone's seeing everything. It's a sensory network, he explained, leaning against the counter. Each clone is a part of me. What they see, I see. What they feel, I feel. It's useful for finding out where the enemy is hiding their toilet paper. She didn't smile, but a flicker of interest lit her eyes. Your power is strange. You have no idea, he chuckled. He could feel her unease, a low hum of anxiety beneath her stoic exterior. The angels had shaken her badly. Before he could say anything more, he felt it. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a tremor. It was a disturbance in the very fabric of the world around him. He instantly closed his eyes, focusing, dropping into a shallow state of sage mode. The sounds of the night, the crickets, the wind, the hum of the mansion's magical defenses, faded away. He listened instead to the song of life, the flow of natural energy. And in that song, there were 3 sour notes. 3 presences, cloaked and silent, had slipped through the Grimoire wards like smoke through a keyhole. Their life force was muted, suppressed by some kind of dark magic, but to his sage senses, they were like black hoe. Less in the vibrant tapestry of the night. They were moving with chilling speed and purpose, not towards Rias's room, not towards his own, but directly towards the kitchen. Directly towards Kaneko. His eyes snapped open. "Get behind me," he said, his voice dropping the lazy tone, replaced now by the sharp, cold edge of a predator. Kaneko blinked, confused. What? The air in the kitchen grew heavy and still. A complex, shadowy magic circle, pulsing with a sickly purple light, began to form on the floor around her. Black, ethereal chains shot up from the runes, wrapping around her arms and legs, pinning her in place. She let out a small, surprised cry, her strength useless against the magical bindings. 3 figures faded into existence from the shadows. They were dressed in black, form-fitting bodysuits. Their faces covered by masks that depicted leering, demonic visages. They were not powerful in the way Kokobile was, nor zealous like the angels. They radiated a cold, professional lethality. Assassins. 1. Clearly the leader, held his hands out, his fingers weaving intricate signs as he poured energy into the teleportation circle now glowing brightly beneath Kaneko's feet. The other 2 flanked him, drawing wicked-looking daggers that seemed to drink the moonlight, their blades coated in a foul, black energy. "The vessel is secured," the leader said, his voice a distorted whisper. "Lord Kryuzer will be pleased. The Nekomata's senjutsu potential will make her the perfect catalyst." They weren't here to fight. This was a snatch and grab. They had bypassed the defenses, subdued the target, and were preparing to leave, all within seconds. But they hadn't accounted for him. "Let her go." Naruto's voice was a low growl. He hadn't moved from his spot by the counter, but his entire demeanor had changed. The friendly, goofy blonde was gone. In his place was a Jinchuriki, a sage, a veteran of 100 battles, and his friend was in danger. The 2 assassins with daggers instantly turned to face him. Their stance low and ready. "The target is the Nekomata only," one of them hissed. "Do not interfere, and you may be allowed to live." Naruto just smiled. It was a cold, terrifying thing. "That's my line." He vanished. He didn't use a jutsu. He simply moved, his sage-enhanced speed a blur that the assassins' eyes couldn't track. He appeared between them, a Rasengan already formed in his right hand, a small, dense, perfectly controlled sphere of swirling chakra. He slammed it into the floor. The resulting explosion wasn't large, but it was powerful. The floorboards erupted, the shockwave throwing both assassins off their feet. The leader, the mage, grunted as his concentration was broken, the teleportation circle flickering violently. One of the assassins recovered midair, twisting his body and throwing his cursed dagger. It flew, not at Naruto, but at the helpless Kaneko. It was a diversion, a cruel choice. Save himself or save the girl. Naruto didn't hesitate. He appeared in front of Kaneko, catching the dagger by the blade. The black energy on it sizzled against his skin, a corrupting poison that tried to eat into his chakra. He crushed the dagger in his fist, the metal groaning in protest. "Big mistake," he growled. A shadow clone popped into existence behind the assassin who had thrown the dagger, sweeping his legs out from under him. As he fell, the real Naruto was there, his fist cocked back. The punch was a short, brutal jab to the solar plexus that sent the man flying across the room, unconscious before he even hit the wall. The second assassin lunged, his own dagger aimed at Naruto's throat. Naruto sidestepped, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting it at an unnatural angle with a sickening crack. The assassin screamed, and Naruto lensed him with a sharp chop to the back of the neck. It had taken less than 5 seconds. 2 elite assassins, dispatched with brutal, non-lethal efficiency. Only the mage was left. Seeing his comrades defeated, he abandoned the teleportation. His hands flew through a different set of seals, and a wave of dark, grasping shadows shot from his feet, racing across the floor toward Naruto. "You will not take me!" the mage shrieked, a small, black orb forming in his hand, a self-destruct spell. Naruto slapped his hands on the floor. Earth-style. Mud wall. A thick, sturdy wall of stone erupted from the kitchen tiles, blocking the wave of shadows. At the same moment, another Naruto, a clone he'd created in the split second of the fight, leapt over the wall. The mage, focused on the original, didn't see him coming until the clone slammed a Rasengan into his back, neutralizing the self-destruct spell and sending him crashing to the floor, his magical energy scattered. The purple chains around Kaneko dissolved into smoke. The kitchen was a wreck. The fight was over. The silence that fell was broken only by Kaneko's ragged breathing. Naruto walked over to the unconscious mage, checking to make sure he was secure before turning his attention to Kaneko. She was trembling, her wide golden eyes staring at the spot where the chains had bound her. She looked small, fragile, and terrified. He knelt in front of her, his expression softening, the cold fury of battle melting away to be replaced by a gentle concern. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. She just stared at her own hands, a profound, soul-deep horror in her eyes. "They wanted me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Because of what I am. They said, catalyst, senjutsu." The commotion had finally alerted the others. Rias, Akeno, and Kiba burst into the kitchen, their eyes widening at the scene of destruction and the three unconscious, black-clad figures on the floor. "Naruto, Kaneko-chan, what happened?" Rias exclaimed. Naruto ignored them. He kept his focus entirely on the trembling girl in front of him. "Kaneko," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Look at me." She slowly lifted her head, and he saw the tears welling in her eyes. "It's happening again," she choked out. "My power. It only brings pain. It makes me a target. It makes me a monster." This was more than just fear from the attack. This was old trauma, a deep wound that had just been ripped open. "No," Naruto said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You're not a monster." He reached out, gently placing a hand on her head. "I know you're scared. I know what it's like to have a power inside you that you think is a curse." He let out a long breath, and for the first time in this world, he willingly opened the gates. A wave of Kurama's chakra, warm and powerful, flowed from him. It wasn't the oppressive, killing intent he'd shown Rias before. This was different. It was the raw, unfiltered presence of the nine-tailed fox, a being of immense power and, now, of deep, rumbling understanding. He projected not just the power, but the memories, the feelings associated with it. Kaneko gasped. For a fleeting moment, she saw what he saw, a lonely boy on a swing set. Ostracized and feared, she felt the rage of a caged beast, the pain of being hated for simply existing. And then, she felt the slow, arduous journey from hatred to tolerance. From tolerance to understanding, and finally, from understanding to a powerful, unshakable friendship. She felt the bond between the boy and the beast, two halves of a whole, a power that was no longer a curse, but a source of incredible strength. "The power isn't the monster, Kaneko," Naruto said, his voice a comforting anchor in the storm of emotions. "It's just power. It's what you do with it that matters. You use your power to protect your friends. To protect Rias. That makes you a hero. Not a monster." A sob finally broke free from her, a raw, painful sound she had likely held back for years. She launched herself forward, wrapping her small arms around his waist, burying her face in his jacket. All the fear, all the loneliness, all the pain of being abandoned by her sister and fearing her own nature. It all came pouring out. Naruto held her, gently stroking her white hair, letting her cry. He was her shield, an unbreachable wall against all the things that haunted her. Rias, Akeno, and Kiba watched from the doorway, a silent, powerful understanding passing between them. They were witnessing something more profound than any battle. "They will never touch you again," Naruto murmured into her hair. His voice a quiet, unbreakable vow. "I won't let them. You're not a vessel. You're not a catalyst. You're Kaneko Tuju. You're my friend. And I protect my friends." Under the pale moonlight, in a wrecked kitchen that had become a battlefield, a lonely cat found a place she finally, truly felt safe. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. Hallowed steel, unholy light. The Grimoire mansion was a fortress on high alert. The tranquil peace of the previous day had been shattered, replaced by the grim tension of a garrison awaiting a siege. Graphia Lucifuge had returned at Searzex's behest, her presence a silent, chilling promise of the situation's gravity. The three assassins, now bound by chains of demonic energy that pulsed with a debilitating light, were held in the mansion's magically reinforced basement. The interrogation was a cold, clinical affair. Graphia conducted it, her voice never rising above a detached, silver-toned murmur, yet her every word carried the weight of an executioner's axe. The assassins were fanatics, their minds shielded by dark oaths, but under the relentless pressure of the strongest queen, cracks began to form. Naruto stood in the corner of the damp, stone room. His arms crossed, a silent observer. He wasn't needed for the interrogation itself. His presence alone was a potent psychological tool. The memory of his 5-second takedown was a far more effective threat than any physical torture. The old Satan faction, Graphia stated, her silver eyes boring into the lead mage. Descendants of the original Devil Kings who refused to accept the new order. Your master, Kreuzer, is a descendant of the original Leviathan, is he not? The mage spat a wad of bloody saliva on the floor. The true heirs will reclaim what is theirs. We will wash away the filth of this new, pathetic underworld that cowers before angels and men. And the girl, Graphia's voice was like chipping ice. Why Kaneko Tuju? The assassin let out a dry, rasping laugh. The abyssal progenitor slumbers. Its prison weakens, but it requires a key. A unique resonance to shatter the final seal. A power that can bridge life and death, creation and oblivion. Senjutsu. The Nekomata's latent potential, her connection to natural energy, makes her the perfect catalyst to awaken our true lord and usher in an age of glorious chaos. Naruto's jaw tightened. So that was it. They weren't just kidnapping Kaneko. They were planning to use her as a sacrificial key to unleash some primordial entity. The casual cruelty of it, the willingness to use a person as a mere tool, stoked the embers of Kurama's rage within him. You will fail, Graphia said, her tone absolute. Lord Searzex has already dispatched a unit to hunt Kreuzer. Your plot is over. She turned, her duty done, and looked at Naruto. The prisoners will be transported to Luciferod for further questioning. As they ascended the stone steps back into the opulent warmth of the mansion, Graphia paused. You have the gratitude of both the House of Grimoire and the House of Baal, Naruto Uzumaki. You protected not only the rook of this peerage, but my lord's younger sister. She's my friend, Naruto replied simply. That's all the reason I need. His simple declaration seemed to momentarily surprise the usually unflappable maid. A flicker of something, respect, perhaps even warmth, passed through her silver eyes before the mask of professional stoicism slid back into place. They found Rias and the others waiting in the main parlor, the tension in the room so thick it was a physical presence. They are a death cult. Obsessed with a bygone era, Rias summarized after Graphia gave her report. And they've made Kaneko-chan their primary target. She looked over at her rook, who was curled on a plush armchair, trying to make herself as small as possible. Naruto's words the night before had been a bomb, but the wound was still fresh. The tense strategy session was interrupted by the chime of the mansion's magical doorbell. Akano, who had been preparing tea, went to answer it, her expression wary. She returned a moment later, her smile strained. President, she said, her voice tight. We have visitors from the church. Walking into the parlor behind her were two young women. The first was tall, with blue hair cut in an asymmetrical style, her face set in a severe, determined expression. She radiated an aura of zealous conviction and carried a massive sword wrapped in cloth on her back. The second was a brunette with a cheerful face and a long ponytail, her presence much warmer, though her eyes were sharp and watchful. Rias Grimoire, the blue-haired woman stated, her voice clear and strong, without a hint of politeness. I am Zenobia Quarta. This is Irina Shido. We are here on behalf of the church. Kiba, who had been standing by the window, stiffened. Irina, he breathed, his voice filled with disbelief. The brunette's eyes widened, her professional demeanor melting away. Kiba-kun, is that really you? You know each other? Rias asked, surprised. We were childhood friends, Kiba explained, his gaze locked with Irina's. Part of the project that created me. DxD and spoken words hung in the air. The Holy Sword Project. Zenobia ignored the reunion, her sharp blue eyes sweeping the room, lingering on Akeno with disdain before settling on Naruto. We are here to investigate the theft of several Excalibur fragments. They were taken by the fallen angel Kokobile. Our intelligence indicates he was defeated here, in this town. We have come to retrieve what is whole. Why and to purge any devils who stand in our way. Her gaze was a direct challenge. Rias stood up, her crimson demonic aura flaring to life. This is Grimoire territory. You will show respect, or you will be removed. By force, if necessary. The air crackled with tension, the oppressive holy aura of the exorcists clashing with the demonic power of the Grimoire peerage. Naruto sighed, pushing himself from the armchair he'd been lounging in. He stepped between the two groups, a calm, immovable object in a sea of rising hostility. Everybody take a breath, he said, his voice casual but carrying an undeniable authority. He looked at Zenobia. We didn't take your swords. We took down the guy who did. Azazel, the leader of the fallen angels, came and collected him and the sword pieces. If you have a problem, take it up with him. Zenovia's eyes narrowed. And why should we believe the words of a man who stands with devils? Because he's the one who beat Kokobile when no one else could, Akeno said. Her voice a purr that held a sharp, protective edge. And he did it to protect this town and everyone in it. His nature is irrelevant, Zenobia countered, her hand tightening on the hilt of her wrapped sword. He consorts with demons. He is an enemy of God. Your God seems to have a lot of enemies, Naruto observed dryly. He was getting tired of the black and white worldview of this world's fanatics. Angels, devils, church exorcists, they were all so certain of their own righteousness. Look, we don't want your swords, and we don't want a fight. We have bigger problems right now. Why don't you take your crusade somewhere else? Before the standoff could escalate further, Irina, who had been talking quietly with Kiba, stepped forward. Zenobia, wait. Azazel returning the sword. It aligns with the new policies of the Grigori. They have been pushing for peace. Perhaps we should verify his story before we declare war on an entire devil household. She gave Kiba a pleading look. Zenobia was silent for a long moment, her rigid faith warring with the tactical sense of her partner. Fine, she conceded, her voice sharp as glass. We will investigate this, Azazel. But know this, devils. If we find you have deceived us, our judgment will be swift and absolute. She gave Naruto one last, suspicious glare before turning on her heel. Let's go, Irina. As the two exorcists left, a tense quiet settled over the room. Well, Akeno said with a forced lightness. That was unpleasant. Their children playing at war, Naruto muttered, shaking his head. Clinging to rules ND words because they're afraid of a world that's more complicated than their books tell them. But as he watched them go, he felt a flicker of unease. He had sensed something else during the confrontation. A faint, almost imperceptible trace of the same cold, sterile holy power he'd felt from the celestial aegis. It was clinging to the exorcists like a faint perfume, so subtle they were likely unaware of it. Someone was watching them, and he had a very bad feeling he knew who it was. Later that day, the feeling hadn't subsided. It was a low-level hum at the base of his skull, a sage's intuition screaming that something was wrong. Rias had received a message from Sona. Fried Selzen, the crazed stray priest who had worked with Kokobile, had been spotted near the abandoned shopping district downtown, wielding what looked like one of the Excalibur fragments. It was an obvious trap, but Zenobia and Irina, desperate to reclaim their holy relics, would surely walk right into it. We have to go, Rias said. Her expression determined. If a battle between church agents and a fallen angel sympathizer breaks out in the middle of our town, the political fallout will be disastrous. It's not our fight, Naruto countered. Though he knew it was a losing argument. Everything that happens in this town is our fight now, she replied, her gaze unwavering. And besides, she added, her voice softening slightly, Kiba is worried about his friend. We don't abandon our own. Her words hit their mark. Naruto sighed. Fine, but we're doing this my way. Recon first. No charging in. They found the scene exactly as they'd expected. In the central, crumbling courtyard of the derelict shopping mall, Fried Selzen was cackling madly, swinging a grotesque sword that looked like 4 different blades crudely fused together. It pulsed with a chaotic, dissonant holy energy. Facing him were Zenobia and Irina, their own stances grim. Zenobia had unwrapped her weapon, revealing the legendary holy sword Durandal. Its aura so powerful it seemed to warp the air around it. Irina wielded a shimmering ring of light, a mimicry of a holy sword's power. "Come on, you holier-than-thou bitches!" Fried shrieked, his eyes wide with mania. "Let's see if your fancy swords can handle the might of Excalibur." The battle was a whirlwind of light and steel. Zenobia was a powerhouse, her Durandal carving arcs of destructive holy power through the air, shattering concrete and tearing through steel beams. But Fried was unnaturally fast and fought with a wild, unpredictable style that kept her off balance. Irina provided support, her light rings trying to bind him, but he was too erratic. The Grimoire peerage watched from a nearby rooftop. "This is a mess," Naruto muttered. "They're just trying to overpower him. No strategy." As he spoke, he felt it again. That cold, sterile presence. Stronger this time. He scanned the surrounding rooftops. There. 3 of them. The same white and gold armor, the same featureless visors as the ones who had attacked them after the raiding game. The celestial Aegis. They weren't participating. They were just watching, judging. The fight below reached a fever pitch. Zenobia, growing frustrated, unleashed a massive wave of power from Durandal. "That's it, you freak!" she roared. "Disappear!" The blast of holy energy was immense, a tidal wave of destruction that tore across the courtyard. Fried, cackling, was engulfed in the light. But as the light faded, he was still standing, protected by a tall, imposing figure who had appeared in front of him. It was one of Kokobeel's lieutenants. A massive fallen angel with 4 black wings. He had taken the full force of the blast and was merely smoking. "Valpierre Galilei sends his regards," the fallen angel grunted, "BEF." Or grabbing the surprised Fried and rocketing into the sky, disappearing with the Excalibur fragment. Zenobia fell to her knees, panting, the massive attack having drained her reserves. Damn it! They got away. It was then that the angels made their move. They descended from the rooftops not with a flutter of wings, but with the silent, deadly drop of assassins. They landed in a perfect triangle around the 2 exhausted exorcists, their light swords materializing in their hands. Zenobia Quarta, Irina Shido, the lead angel's synthesized voice droned. "You have been observed consorting with devils. You have failed to retrieve the holy relics. You operate under a mandate of tolerance and peace that is an insult to the divine will." Zenobia stared at them, her eyes wide with disbelief and confusion. Who are you?" "We are agents of the church. Servants of heaven. The church has been corrupted. Heaven has grown weak, complacent," the angel stated, its cold, featureless visor fixed on her. "We are the celestial Aegis. We are the true inheritors of God's final, unspoken commandment, to maintain purity. You have been judged as heretics. Your sentence is purification." The 3 angels raised their swords in perfect, chilling unison. Irina screamed. Zenobia tried to raise Durandal, but she was too slow, too tired. Shadow clone jutsu. A dozen Narutos erupted from the rooftops. A wave of orange and black that descended on the courtyard. Half of them threw a volley of kunai, not to harm, but to force the angels to shift their attention. The other half moved to intercept. Real Naruto appeared in a flash of movement directly between the lead angel and the 2 exorcists, his back to them. He didn't have a weapon. He just stood there, a human shield against divine wrath. The angel's sword sliced down. A blur of golden light meant to cleave a soul in 2. Naruto caught the blade between his palms, the holy energy hissing and steaming as it made contact with his chakra-infused skin. The force of the blow drove him back a step, his boots carving furrows in the broken concrete, but he held. "You again," the angel's synthesized voice said, a flicker of something like surprise in its tone. "The anomaly. I'm getting really tired of you guys," Naruto grunted, the muscles in his arms straining as he pushed the blade back. "Picking on people when they're already worn out. Got a thing for unfair fights." Zenobia and Irina could only stare, their minds reeling. Angels were trying to execute them. And a man they had branded an enemy of God was now standing as their only defense. The world had turned upside down. Our mission is absolute, the angel declared, its comrades effortlessly dispatching Naruto's clones with precise, efficient strikes. All who are unclean must be purged. The devils, their human sympathizers, and the heretics who enable them. That's a pretty long list. Naruto shot back, kicking the angel's knee and forcing it to stumble back. He turned his head slightly, not taking his eyes off his opponent. Rias, get them out of here. We're not leaving you, Rias shouted from the rooftop, a swirling ball of destructive energy already forming in her hand. That wasn't a request, Naruto roared back. Their power is poison to you. Akeno, lightning, Kiba, Kaneko, run interference. Buy me time. His friends, trusting his command, sprang into action. Akeno unleashed a massive thunderbolt from the sky, forcing one of the angels to erect a barrier. Kiba and Kaneko became blurs of motion, harrying the third angel, not trying to win, but simply to keep it occupied. Naruto faced the lead angel. Looks like it's just you and me. The angel tilted its head. Your power is chaotic and undisciplined. It is an affront to divine order. It will be extinguished. It moved, its speed incredible, its sword a continuous, flowing arc of light. Naruto met it with pure taijutsu. It was a deadly dance in the ruined courtyard. The angel was a perfect weapon. Its every move calculated for maximum lethality. But Naruto was a force of nature, his movements fluid, unpredictable, and backed by a lifetime of real-world combat experience. He didn't have the angel's raw, holy power. But he had something better. The will to survive, and the experience to make it happen. He ducked under a slash, spun, and landed a heavy, chakra-laden kick to the angel's side that sent it stumbling. He was faster, stronger, a better fighter. But the armor was incredibly resilient, and the angel felt no pain. Meanwhile, the others were struggling. Akeno's holy lightning was powerful. But the angel's own light-based abilities seemed to partially neutralize it. Kiba's demonic sword sparked and smoked every time it clashed with the angel's blade. Kaneko's raw strength was immense. But she was slow compared to the angel's blinding speed. Naruto saw it out of the corner of his eye. The third angel, tiring of Kiba and Kaneko's harassment, swatted them aside with a powerful wave of energy. It then turned its attention to the most vulnerable target, Irina Shido. It raised its sword for a final, executing blow. Kiba screamed her name. Naruto's eyes flashed red. I've had enough of this. He made a cross-shaped hand seal. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. In an instant, the courtyard was filled with 100 Narutos. They didn't attack. Instead, they all raised their hands. And each one began forming a Rasengan. The air was filled with the sound of 1,000 hornets, a rising crescendo of pure, destructive power. The lead angel froze, its visor fixed on the impossible sight. Analysis. This power level is illogical. This is for messing with my friends. The real Naruto yelled. He held out his hand, and a Rasengan, larger and more violent than the others, formed. Kurama's red chakra bled into it, turning it a malevolent violet. Tailed Beast Rasengan. He shot forward, a blur of orange. The lead angel tried to raise its sword, but it was too slow. The Rasengan slammed into its chest. The impact was catastrophic. The violet sphere expanded, grinding through the divine armor, and sent the angel flying backward like a cannonball. It crashed into its two comrades. And all three were sent tumbling through the air, their perfect formation shattered. They recovered midair, hovering. The lead angel's chest plate was cracked, violet demonic energy still sparking across it. It looked down at the damage, then at Naruto, who stood surrounded by an army of clones, each holding a ready Rasengan. The anomaly's threat potential has been re-evaluated. The lead angel's synthesized voice echoed, devoid of any emotion save for a cold, tactical assessment. Purification of this sector is now designated a Priority 1 objective. All units, withdraw and await reinforcements. In a final, blinding flash of golden light, the three angels vanished, leaving behind a wrecked courtyard and a stunned, uneasy silence. Naruto dispelled his clones, panting slightly. He turned to face the others. Rias and her peerage were rushing to his side, but his gaze went past them, to the two figures from the church. Irina was helping a dazed Zenobia to her feet. The blue-haired exorcist's face was a mask of confusion, her rigid, black and white world shattered into a million shades of gray. Her faith was shaken to its very foundation. She looked at the devils, her enemies, who had fought to protect her. She looked at the spot where the angels, her supposed allies, had stood to execute her. And then she looked at Naruto Uzumaki, the anomaly, the man who stood with devils, who wielded a chaotic, monstrous power. The man who had just saved her life. Why? Zenobia asked, her voice barely a whisper, ragged and raw. Why did you save us? Naruto met her gaze, his expression serious. Because you were people who needed help, he said, as if it were the simplest, most obvious thing in the world. Where I'm from, that's all the reason you ever need. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. When Heaven Descends. The journey back to the Grimoire estate was a procession of strained silence. Zenobia, leaning heavily on Irina for support, walked with the stiff, uncertain gait of someone whose entire world had been kicked out from under them. The devils she had been trained since birth to view as the ultimate evil had just fought and bled to protect her. The angels, the supposed paragons of virtue she served, had tried to execute her as a heretic. The cognitive dissonance was a palpable force, leaving her pale and withdrawn. They gathered in the main parlor, a strange, eclectic assembly of mortal enemies now forced into an uneasy truce. Akeno moved with a quiet efficiency, tending to the minor cuts and bruises they had all sustained. Her touch was gentle as she applied a healing salve to a cut on Zenovia's arm, and the exorcist flinched, not from pain, but from the sheer strangeness of being cared for by a fallen angel's daughter. So, what happens now? Irina asked, her usual cheerfulness replaced by a somber pragmatism as she watched Kiba bandage his own arm. We can't go back. The church hierarchy would never believe us, and if this celestial aegis has infiltrated them, we'd be walking into our own execution. You will stay here, Rias declared, her voice leaving no room for argument. She stood before the fireplace, her crimson hair like flickering flames in the dim light. You are now targets, just as we are. You are safer with us than anywhere else. Zenobia looked up, her blue eyes filled with a turbulent storm of conflict. Why? Why are you doing this? We are your enemies. We came here to purge you. That was before, Rias said simply. Before a common enemy tried to purge us all. The board has changed. The old rules no longer apply. Naruto, who had been silently observing from the shadows, stepped forward. She's right, he said, his gaze on Zenobia. It doesn't matter what you were. It matters what you are now. And right now, you're people without a place to go. Being hunted by fanatics with big, shiny swords. That makes you our problem. He gave a slight, weary smile. And we're getting pretty good at handling problems. His simple, straightforward logic seemed to cut through some of Zenovia's turmoil. She didn't have an answer for it. She simply nodded, a barely perceptible gesture, and looked down at her hands, which still trembled slightly. It was in that moment of quiet reflection that Naruto froze. His head snapped up, his eyes wide. The casual, relaxed posture vanished, replaced by the coiled tension of a soldier hearing an incoming mortar shell. Everyone in the room felt the shift in his demeanor. What is it, Naruto-kun? Akeno asked, her hand hovering over Zenovia's arm. Something's wrong, he whispered. He closed his eyes, his senses expanding, pushing past the walls of the mansion, past the Grimoire wards, and spreading out over the entire town. He wasn't just listening for chakra signatures or life forces. He was feeling the very air, the pressure, the subtle currents of energy that flowed through the world. And what he felt made his blood run cold. It was like the pressure before a massive thunderstorm, a heavy, suffocating weight pressing down on everything. A vast, impossibly huge amount of holy energy was gathering in the atmosphere above Kuo town. This wasn't the pinpoint insertion of a few stealth units. This was the muster point for an army. Rias, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Get on the line to Sona. Now, tell her to sound a general alarm. What's happening? Rias demanded, already moving towards her communication circle. They're coming, Naruto said, his eyes snapping open. They held the grim certainty of a man who had seen the dawn of war too many times. All of them, as if on cue, a piercing, high-pitched siren began to wail from the student council building across town, a magical alarm that echoed through the demonic networks. Moments later, Rias's communication circle flared to life. Sona Citre's frantic face appearing in the shimmering light. Rias, Our long-range sensors are going insane. The sky above the town, it's tearing open. Naruto was already at the window, staring up into the night sky. And he saw it. The stars were disappearing, not clouded over, but erased. Rifts of pure, golden light were opening in the fabric of the heavens, bleeding energy into the world. They were like wounds in the night, beautiful and terrifying. From those golden wounds, they descended. It was a silent, horrifying spectacle. Not a chaotic horde, but a disciplined, endless legion. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of the white and gold armored angels dropped from the rifts, their forms sleek and terrible against the night sky. They fanned out in perfect formations. Their movements synchronized, their purpose absolute. They were a righteous, cleansing fire, and Kuo Town was the kindling. My God, Zenobia breathed, standing beside Naruto at the window, her face ashen. She was seeing the armies of heaven, the glorious legions she had revered her entire life, and they had come not as saviors, but as destroyers. The purification began without warning or declaration. Beams of golden light lanced down from the angelic formations, striking not just the Grimoire estate or the student council building, but residential streets, parks, the downtown shopping district. Each beam that struck a building didn't cause an explosion of fire and shrapnel. It simply unmade it. The matter dissolved into motes of glittering dust, a clean, sterile annihilation. They weren't just destroying the town, they were erasing it. They're not just targeting us, Kiba said, his voice hollow with shock. They're targeting everyone. To them, any human who lives in territory governed by devils is tainted, Graphia stated, her voice a chilling monotone as she appeared in the parlor doorway. They are all part of the unclean. This is a total purge. We have to stop them. Irina cried, her horror overcoming her fear. Rias's face was a mask of cold fury. Kaneko, Kiba, protect the mansion's perimeter. Akano, Graphia, you're with me. We're taking the fight to them. Naruto, what's the plan? All eyes turned to him. He was no longer just an ally. In this moment of crisis, he was their undisputed commander. Naruto's mind was already racing, processing 1,000 variables at once. This isn't a fight you can win head-on, he said, his voice sharp and clear, cutting through the rising panic. This is a disaster relief operation that happens to have swords. Our priorities have changed. Priority 1. Civilians. Priority 2. Contain the damage. Priority 3. Survive. He made a cross-shaped seal. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. The mansion was instantly filled with 1,000 Narutos. He pointed at one group of clones. Get to the residential districts. Evacuate everyone. Use transformation jutsu, whatever it takes, just get them out of the line of fire and into the subway tunnels. He pointed at another group. You're on search and rescue. Find anyone trapped, injured, or hiding. He turned to Rias and the others. Your job is to run interference. Don't try to win fights. Just draw their fire. Keep them off the civilians. Create chaos. Disrupt their perfect little formations. Sona and her team are going to be doing the same. I'll patch you into a shared mental network with my clones. You'll get real-time intel. Move fast, hit hard, and then disappear. This is a guerrilla war now. And what will you be doing? Rias asked, her trust in him absolute. The original Naruto grinned, a flash of the fierce, indomitable will that had ended a world war. I'm going to find their leader and punch him so hard his ancestors feel it. Without another word, he smashed through the window and shot into the night sky, a streak of orange against the encroaching golden tide. The Battle of Kuo Town was a symphony of chaos. The combined forces of the Grimoire and Sea-Tree peerages, guided by the constant, overwhelming stream of information from Naruto's clones, became a phantom army. They would appear from a side street, unleash a devastating combination of destructive energy and water magic, and then vanish before the angelic squadrons could retaliate. Kiba found himself fighting back to back with Zenobia, his demonic sword a blur of black, hers a river of holy light. On your left, he'd shout, and she would spin, Durandal cleaving an angel in two without hesitation. Above you, she'd counter, and he would conjure a dozen SWO. Road birth blades to intercept a descending angel. They were a whirlwind of opposing forces, their old enmity burned away in the crucible of battle, leaving only a grudging, deadly respect. Akeno was a storm-given form. She flew high above the battlefield, no longer the seductive queen, but a wrathful Valkyrie. She didn't just throw lightning. She summoned a roiling, black thunderhead over the town, a storm of her own making. Bolts of her unique, devastating holy lightning rained down, not randomly, but with pinpoint precision, striking the angelic command units that Naruto's clones identified for her. For the first time, she was using every ounce of her hated heritage, not as a source of shame, but as a weapon to protect her home, and it was glorious. But for every angel they struck down, 2 more would descend from the rifts. The sheer, overwhelming number of the Aegis was a tide that threatened to drown them. They were winning skirmishes, but they were losing the war. The real Naruto moved through the battlefield like a ghost. He was searching. His sage senses were stretched to their absolute limit, filtering through the cacophony of thousands of holy energy signatures, looking for the one that was different. The one that was giving the orders. He found it. At the highest point in the town, the roof of Kuo Academy, the very nexus of spiritual energy they sought to control or destroy, stood a new figure. It was larger than the other angels, its armor more ornate, etched with glowing golden runes. It didn't wield a sword, but a massive spear of pure, solidified light that hummed with a terrifying power. Its presence was a beacon of command, the calm, cold center of the storm. This was the general. Naruto landed on the roof, his boots scuffing on the tiles. "I'm guessing you're the one in charge of this mess," he said, his voice deceptively casual. The commander turned, its featureless visor fixing on him. "The anomaly," its voice boomed, deeper and more resonant than the others. "I am Cassiel, Hand of the Archangel. Your chaotic existence ends tonight. This world will be cleansed, and you will be its first offering." Cassiel raised his spear, and the tip blazed with a light as bright as a miniature sun. "Submit to purification." He thrust the spear forward, and a beam of incandescent energy, white as a freight train, shot towards Naruto. It was an attack designed to obliterate not just him, but the entire school building beneath him. Naruto didn't try to dodge. He met the attack head-on. "Not gonna happen," he roared. A torrent of golden chakra erupted from him, a violent, searing energy that was vastly more potent than the calm, natural power of Sage Mode. It was the raw, untamed power of the nine-tailed fox, now willingly unleashed. His body was enveloped in a familiar, blazing golden cloak. His whisker marks thickened, his eyes turned feral, and his entire being radiated power on a scale that dwarfed everything else on the battlefield. Kurama Chakra Mode, Stage 2. He thrust his own hands forward, and a massive, chakra-dense version of a Biju bomb formed, swirling with the chaotic blades of a Rasenshuriken. Tailed Beast Ball Rasenshuriken. He hurled it. The golden beam of holy light and the black, screaming sphere of demonic wind met in the middle. The resulting explosion was a cataclysm. A dome of black and gold energy erupted over the school, so bright it turned the night into a false, terrifying day. The shockwave tore through the town, shattering every remaining window for miles and sending angels and devils alike tumbling through the air. Below, Rias and the others could only stare up in awe and terror. The power being unleashed in that single exchange was greater than anything they had ever witnessed, greater than the Devil Kings. Greater even than the legends of the original Great War. On the rooftop, amidst the swirling energies, Naruto and Cassiel charged each other. Their battle was no longer a terrestrial fight. They moved at speeds that were mere blurs of gold and white, their clashes creating sonic booms that echoed like thunder. Cassiel's spear was a torrent of holy power, each swing capable of leveling a city block. Naruto, cloaked in Kurama's power, was his equal, his fists and feet striking with the force of meteors, massive golden chakra arms erupting from his back to parry and counter. "Your power is an abomination," Cassiel bellowed, his spear transforming into 100 smaller javelins that rained down on Naruto. "My power saved the world," Naruto roared back, creating a massive avatar of Kurama's head to shield himself. The javelins shattering against its golden chakra. "Yours is trying to burn it down. Tell me, who's the real monster here?" He shot forward, a golden comet of pure rage. He formed a giant Rasengan in his hand, a swirling vortex of destructive power, and slammed it into Cassiel's chest. The divine armor that had seemed invincible buckled and cracked. The angel was sent hurtling backward, crashing through the clock tower, which crumbled into dust under the impact. But Cassiel was not defeated. He rose from the rubble, his armor shattered in places, but his holy light undimmed. The Archangel's will is absolute. If this world will not be cleansed, then it will be unmade. He raised his spear to the sky, and it began to draw power not just from him, but from every single Aegis soldier in the town. And from the golden rifts above, a colossal sphere of holy energy, a sun of pure annihilation, began to form above Kuo Academy. It was a final, desperate gambit. A divine bomb that would wipe the entire region from the face of the planet. Naruto looked up at the growing star of death, then down at the town where his friends were still fighting, where his clans were still trying to save innocent lives. He gritted his teeth. He had wanted to hold back, to not reveal the true, world-breaking extent of his power. But there was no choice. Kurama, he said, his voice a low growl. Let's do it, Kit. The great fox rumbled in his mind, a wave of immense, ancient power flowing into him. Let's show these tin soldiers what a real god of destruction looks like. Naruto's golden cloak exploded outward. His form changed, growing larger, more defined, until he was encased in a massive, translucent golden avatar of the nine-tailed fox, a perfect fusion of man and Biju. The Kurama avatar looked up at the descending sun of holy power and opened its massive jaws. A swirl of positive black chakra and negative white chakra began to coalesce, spinning into a small, impossibly dense sphere. The tailed beast bomb. Be gone! Cassiel screamed, thrusting his spear down. The holy sun plummeted towards the town. Naruto unleashed his attack. The tailed beast bomb shot upward, not as a beam, but as a concentrated sphere of pure, unadulterated power that distorted the very space around it. The two attacks met high in the sky. For a single, silent, heart-stopping moment, there was nothing. Just a sphere of perfect blackness meeting a sphere of perfect light. Then, the world turned white. The explosion was silent, all sound erased by the sheer magnitude of the energy release. It was a blast that tore the golden rifts in the sky to shreds, a wave of force that vaporized the clouds for 100 miles in every direction. When vision returned, the fake sun was gone. Cassiel hovered in the sky. His spear shattered, his armor gone, his angelic form flickering and unstable. He stared at the golden avatar below him, his synthesized voice now filled with something it had never held before, fear. What are you? The avatar's massive head turned, its glowing red eyes fixing on the broken angel. It raised a colossal golden claw. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, the voice boomed. A fusion of man and monster. And I'm the guy who's ending your war. The claw swiped. Cassiel, and the last vestiges of the celestial Aegis invasion, were simply gone. Wiped from existence. With their commander vanquished and the rifts torn apart, the morale of the remaining Aegis soldiers shattered completely. In perfect, disciplined unison, they performed a tactical retreat, flying back into the sky and vanishing into nothingness. The battle was over. As the dawn began to break, its gentle pink and orange light touched a town that was scarred, broken, but still standing. Naruto released the avatar, shrinking back down to his normal form, the golden cloak receding, leaving him standing alone on the ruins of the school roof. He was exhausted, but he was resolute. Below, the fighting had stopped. Devils, exorcists, and humans looked up at the lone figure silhouetted against the rising sun. They had survived. They had won. But the image of that golden god of destruction and the silent, terrifying explosion that had saved them was burned into their minds forever. The world had just learned a new truth. A power had arrived unlike any it had ever known, and nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. A Throne of Lies. Dawn broke not with warmth and promise, but with the cold, gray light of a hangover. The air over Kuo town was thick with the dust of pulverized concrete and the sharp, metallic scent of ozone left behind by an extinguished war. Smoke curled from the skeletons of buildings in lazy, mournful plumes. An eerie silence had fallen, the familiar sounds of morning traffic and city life replaced by the whisper of the wind through shattered windows. On the ruined rooftop of Kuo Academy, Naruto Uzumaki finally let his exhaustion catch up to him. He sat down on a jagged piece of rubble, the last vestiges of Kurama's chakra receding into him, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. He had saved the town, but the cost was etched into every street below him. It was a familiar feeling, this hollow ache of a victory that felt too much like a loss. He had fought a great war to end all wars, only to be dragged into a new one. Footsteps, light and hesitant, sounded behind him. He didn't need to turn. He could feel their signatures, a mix of relief, awe, and a new, profound wariness. Naruto. Rias's voice was soft, stripped of its usual aristocratic command. He looked over his shoulder. Her entire peerage was there, their clothes torn, their faces smudged with soot. They looked at him differently now. Before, he was a powerhouse, a trump card, a friend. Now, they had seen the golden god of destruction, the being who could engage an army and erase its commander with a single, world-shaking blast. They had seen the true, terrifying scale of his power. And it had created a new, invisible distance between them. Rias walked closer, her gaze fixed on him, her blue-green eyes searching his face. She wasn't looking at the golden avatar or the Biju bomb. She was looking for the man she had come to know, the one who challenged her, who fought for her, who made terrible ramen in her kitchen. She stopped in front of him, her expression a complex storm of emotions. "Are you, all right?" It was such a simple, human question. In the face of the apocalyptic power he had just displayed, it was the most grounding thing she could have said. Naruto managed a tired, lopsided grin. "Yeah, just need a nap. Maybe for a week." The tension broke. Akino let out a shaky laugh, a sound of pure relief. Kiba shook his head in disbelief, a slow smile spreading across his face. Kaneko, who had been hiding behind Kiba, stepped forward and silently offered Naruto a slightly crushed chocolate bar from her pocket. He took it with a grateful nod. The invisible wall their fear had built crumbled away. He was still just Naruto. Rias knelt in front of him, her hand hovering for a moment before she gently placed it on his knee. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with an emotion that went far beyond simple gratitude. "You saved us. You saved everything." He looked at her hand, then back to her face. He saw no fear in her eyes, only a deep, unwavering conviction. He had shown her the monster within him, the walking apocalypse he kept leashed, and she hadn't flinched. She had looked past it and asked if he was okay. Before he could respond, a crimson magic circle flared to life on the rooftop. Searsx Lucifer and Graphia Lucifuge stepped out, their expressions grim. Searsx's gaze swept over the devastation below, a deep sorrow in his violet eyes. The civilian casualties were minimal, Searsx said, his voice heavy. "Your clones, Naruto-kun. They were magnificent. They saved thousands of lives that would have otherwise been lost." He turned his full attention to Naruto, his gaze filled with a respect that bordered on reverence. "The factions are in an uproar. A battle of this magnitude has not been seen since the Great War. Heaven is in disarray. Claiming the Aegis is a rogue element. Azazel is demanding answers. An emergency summit has been called. It will be held at the Grimoire estate in 1 hour." His eyes met Naruto's. "Your presence is not just requested. It is required." The main parlor of the Grimoire mansion had been transformed into a chamber of state. The comfortable furniture had been replaced by a large, circular table. The air was thick with power, a tense, volatile mixture of demonic, holy, and fallen angelic energies that crackled like static electricity. Searsx sat at the head of the table, the very picture of regal calm. Though the slight tightening around his eyes betrayed his stress. Across from him sat Azazel, the Governor-General of the Fallen Angels. He was slouched in his chair, his Sewell laid-back demeanor overlaid with a sharp, analytical intensity. To his right sat a woman of breathtaking beauty, with long, flowing blonde hair and gentle green eyes. She wore immaculate white and gold robes, and a dozen golden wings were folded neatly behind her back. This was the Seraph Gabriel, representing heaven's official government. Her presence was a soothing balm of pure, unadulterated light. Yet her face was etched with deep distress and shame. Rias, Sona, Seraphal, and the other peerage members stood along the walls, a silent, honor guard. Naruto sat at the table between Searsx and Azazel, a position of immense significance. He was dressed in a clean jacket, but he hadn't bothered to change out of his combat pants. He looked utterly out of place, a soldier at a king's court, and he couldn't care less. "To be clear," Azazel began, steepling his fingers, "my organization, Grigori, had nothing to do with this. Kokabeel acted alone. The celestial aegis, however, is your problem, Gabriel. Gabriel flinched, her gentle face filled with pain. The aegis are a splinter faction, Azazel. Zealots who twisted the word of our Father into a doctrine of hate. They do not represent the will of heaven or my brother. Michael, we did not know they had amassed such military strength. We are as shocked and horrified as you are. Shock and horror don't rebuild a city, Seraphal Leviathan interjected. Her usual bubbly persona gone, replaced by the chilling authority of a Satan. Your zealots just declared war on all three factions. What is heaven prepared to do about it? We are launching a full internal investigation, Gabriel said, her voice pleading. We will hunt them down. We will bring them to justice. Azazel scoffed. You'll hunt them. Gabriel, with all due respect, they just fielded an army that held off the combined might of two heiresses, peerages, and were only defeated by, he gestured with his thumb towards Naruto, this walking natural disaster. Internal investigation won't be enough. All eyes turned to Naruto. He hadn't spoken a word, simply listening, his gaze distant. The power unleashed by their commander, Cassiel, was equivalent to a high-tier seraph. Searzex stated calmly, and the final attack, Naruto-kun, the energy signature of your counterattack has our researchers completely baffled. It was, for lack of a better term, divine in its scope. It was big, Naruto said simply, shrugging. The leaders of three separate mythologies were dissecting his power like a science experiment, and he treated it with the gravity of discussing the weather. It was then that the very air in the room grew cold. The light from the windows seemed to dim, and a pressure, immense and utterly suffocating, descended upon them. It was a whole, why power that dwarfed Gabriel's gentle radiance, a power that was not warm or comforting, but cold, sharp, and absolute, like the edge of a divine guillotine. A pillar of golden light, so bright it was painful to look at, materialized in the center of the room. Within the pillar, a figure took shape. It was an angel, but unlike any they had seen. He was tall and regal, with 14 golden wings that burned with a cold fire. His face was a mask of serene, handsome perfection, but his eyes, the color of molten gold, held no warmth, no compassion, only the unyielding certainty of a zealot. This was the archangel Zerachiel. Gabriel gasped, her face turning white with shock. Zerachiel, what is the meaning of this? Silence, sister, Zerachiel's voice echoed, not through the air, but directly in their minds. It was a voice of terrible, beautiful clarity, like a choir of razors. You, who preach tolerance for the unclean, have no right to speak in this chamber. I am here to address the true powers in this room. His golden eyes swept past the Devil Kings, past Azazel, and fixed upon Naruto. I have come to deliver a truth, Zerachiel proclaimed, his mental voice resonating with unshakable conviction. This world is sick, it is infected with chaos. The Great War, the death of our father, it was a symptom of this sickness. A sickness born from compromise, from mingling the pure with the profane. Our father's final command, to love the flawed creation of humanity, was his final error. It was a moment of weakness that shattered the divine order. You are blaspheming, Gabriel cried, tears streaming down her face. I am speaking the truth you are too weak to accept, Zerachiel countered, his focus never leaving Naruto. The path to restoring heaven's glory, to ensuring such a catastrophe never happens again, is not through peace with darkness. It is through purification, the absolute and total eradication of all that is not pure. Devils, fallen, the beasts of the abyss, and the humans who consort with them. His gaze intensified, becoming a tangible, accusatory force. Which brings me to you, anomaly. Naruto Uzumaki. You are human, a being born of the world of light. You possess a power that rivals the divine. Yet you use it to defend this filth. He gestured dismissively to Searzex and the others. Why do you betray your own nature? Why do you stand with the creatures of darkness against the agents of divine order? Look at them. They are corruption given form. You were born for the light. Join us. Help us cleanse this world, and you will be given a place of honor in the new perfect order to come. The chamber was utterly silent. Zerachiel's offer, his chilling manifesto, hung in the air. It was a masterful ideological attack, an attempt to isolate Naruto. To frame him as a traitor to his own kind. Naruto was quiet for a long moment, his head bowed. Then, he let out a short, soft, humorless laugh. He looked up, and for the first time, he met Zerachiel's golden gaze directly. There was no fear in his eyes, only a deep, profound pity. "You know, for a guy with 14 wings, you're really not that bright," Naruto said, his voice calm and clear. Zerachiel's serene expression faltered, a flicker of surprise in his golden eyes. "You talk a lot about purity, and order, and light, and darkness," Naruto continued, leaning forward, his hands flat on the table. "They're just words, labels you use to make the world simple, so you don't have to think too hard. You want to know why I stand with them?" He gestured to Rias and her friends. "'Cause when your army came to burn this town to the ground, they stood up to protect it. They fought to save innocent people. And you're pure and orderly." Soldiers tried to erase them without a second thought. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I've been alive long enough to know that your labels don't mean a damn thing. I've met monsters with more honor than any hero I've ever known. I've seen saviors who were willing to burn the world for their own twisted ideals. Sound familiar?" His voice grew stronger, resonating with the unshakable conviction of his own ninja way. "You don't get to decide who's filth. You don't get to decide who lives and who dies based on what they are. You want to know what I see when I look at them?" He looked at Rias, at Akino, at Kaneko, at all of his new friends. "I see people who are loyal, who are brave, who fight for the people they care about. I see a family." He turned his full attention back to the Archangel, his blue eyes blazing with a fire that was more potent than any holy light. "I was called a monster, too. A demon. The filth of my own village. I had every reason in the world to hate it, to want to see it burn. But people like them, believed in me. They taught me that it's not what's inside you that matters. It's the bonds you make. It's the people you choose to protect." He took a step towards the pillar of light, his presence swelling, not with Kurama's chakra, but with the sheer, indomitable force of his own will. "So here's my answer, Archangel. These are my friends. This is their home, and anyone who tries to hurt them is my enemy. I don't care if you have wings, or a halo, or a damn army of fanatics. You stand in my way, and I will tear you in your perfect order down to the ground. That's a promise." Zerachiel's projection stared at him, the serene mask cracking, revealing the furious zealot beneath. The pressure in the room intensified. "You have made your choice, human. You have chosen to side with the corruption. You will be the first to be purified in the fires of the new dawn." The pillar of golden light imploded, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. The oppressive pressure was gone, but the chilling promise of his words remained. The silence that followed was different. The tension was gone, replaced by a stunned, unified resolve. Naruto's words had been a rallying cry, a declaration of war not just on the Aegis, but on the very ideology of hatred and intolerance that fueled them. He hadn't just rejected Zerachiel's offer. He had given them all a reason to fight. Seraphal Leviathan was the first to move. Her pink, frilly costume seemed to flicker, and for a moment, they saw the true form of the Devil King beneath. A queen of impossible power, her eyes glowing with a cold, blue light. She walked over to Naruto, her expression deadly serious. "The four great Satans are in agreement," she said, her voice devoid of its usual cheer. "The celestial Aegis is an existential threat to us all. But our forces are divided. Our people are afraid." She looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "You are not. You are the only one who has faced them and won. You are the only one who can stand against Zerachiel." She bowed her head, a gesture of profound respect from a monarch to a warrior. "The House of Leviathan, and all the military forces at my command, are yours to lead in this fight. Naruto Uzumaki, we stand with you." Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. War of the Dawn. The Grimoire Parlor, moments before a war room, was now a place of heavy, charged stillness. Zerachiel's chilling promise lingered in the air like the frost of a coming winter. But Naruto's impassioned rebuttal had lit a fire in its place, a single, defiant flame against the encroaching cold. The leaders of the factions had departed in flashes of magical light, returning to their own strongholds to muster their forces, but the core of the alliance remained. Rias, her peerage, Sona, Zenobia, and Irina all looked at Naruto, who had sunk back into his chair, the monumental weight of his declaration seemingly settling on his shoulders. He hadn't just promised to fight an archangel, he had willingly taken the fate of their entire world and placed it squarely upon his own back. That night, as the mansion hummed with the frantic energy of preparation, wards being reinforced, strategies being drawn, and scouts being magically dispatched, Naruto found himself on the wide stone balcony overlooking the estate's sprawling gardens. The moon was high and full, casting the scarred town in a soft silver light that made the devastation look almost peaceful. "You have a habit of doing that." He turned. Rias was standing in the doorway, a simple red nightgown having replaced her uniform. Her hair was down, cascading over her shoulders like a river of silk. "Doing what?" he asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Taking the entire world's burden and acting like it's no heavier than a sack of groceries," she said, walking to stand beside him at the balustrade. "You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to make this your war." "Yeah, I did," he said, looking out at the broken city. When I saw those angels trying to erase families who had nothing to do with any of this, it became my war then." He let out a long breath. "I've seen what happens when people with too much power and no enough heart decide they get to remake the world. It never ends well. Somebody has to stand up and say, no." Rias was silent for a moment, absorbing the simple, profound truth of his words. "My brother, all the Devil Kings, they see you as a strategic asset, a weapon of unimaginable power." She turned to face him, her blue-green eyes luminous in the moonlight. "I don't. When I look at you, I say, a man who is more noble than any hero I have ever read about. I see the man who gave me back my freedom." Before he could process her words, she leaned in and gently, tentatively, kissed his cheek. The touch was soft, warm, and sent a jolt through him that had nothing to do with chakra. "Thank you, Naruto," she whispered, her face flushed as she pulled back. A soft chuckle came from the doorway. "Foo. It seems the president is making her move." Akano glided onto the balcony, her presence a mix of warm night air and the faint scent of ozone. She stopped on Naruto's other side, her violet eyes soft and serious. "He won't just be fighting for you, President. He'll be fighting for all of us." She reached out, her fingers gently brushing against his hand. "You taught me that there is no shame in what I am. You defended me when I couldn't defend myself. My power, all of it, is yours to command." More figures appeared. Kaneko, who walked up and simply stood beside him, a small, solid, and unwavering presence of support. Kiba, Zenobia, and Irina stood in the doorway, their expressions a mixture of awe and fierce loyalty. Even Sona Citri had returned, her usual stern demeanor softened by a deep, grudging admiration. "My peerage and I have analyzed the data from the previous battle," Sona stated, pushing up her glasses. "Zerachiel's power is absolute in its nature. Logically, he is unbeatable." She paused, her eyes meeting Naruto's. "But you defy logic, and so, we will stand with you. It is the most rational choice." He was surrounded, not by soldiers or subordinates, but by people he had, in a remarkably short time, come to care for. People who were now looking to him as their last, best hope. "You just can't help it, can you, Kit?" Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, a familiar, grounding presence. "Find a new world, and within a month you're already at the center of it, collecting strays and challenging gods." "Shut up, you overgrown furball," Naruto thought back, a faint smile touching his lips. It was then that the world went wrong. The gentle moonlight began to change. It intensified, shifting from silver to a pale, sterile gold. The temperature dropped, and the very air grew thin, vibrating with an impossibly high frequency. It wasn't a dawn coming from the east. It was a false dawn, rising from all directions at once, a holy light that sought to bleach the very color from the world. Naruto's smile vanished. His sage senses screamed. An ocean of divine power, a presence so vast and absolute it made the entire invasion force feel like a single raindrop, was focusing on this single point on the globe. "He's here," Naruto said, his voice a low growl. The sky above Kuo town did not tear open. It dissolved. The stars, the moon, the blackness of night, it all melted away, replaced by a seamless, blinding dome of pure, golden light. It was as if they were suddenly inside the heart of a star. And from that heart, he descended. Zerachiel did not fly or teleport. He simply arrived, hovering in the air above the town center. The cold fire of his 14 wings cast shifting, terrible shadows over the broken streets. He wore no armor, only simple white robes. But his entire being radiated a power that bent the light and warped the space around him. In his hand, he held a sword that seemed to be forged from a captured star, its light so pure it was painful to behold. His mental voice washed over them, not as a shout, but as a calm, final judgment. The time for words is over. The age of impurity ends now. Witness the first light of the true dawn. He raised his sword. From the golden dome of the sky, a dozen pillars of light slammed down, impacting around the Grimoire estate. From each pillar, a new kind of angel emerged. They were taller, more elegant than the Aegis foot soldiers. Their armor a liquid silver that shifted like mercury. Each one wielded a different weapon, a spear, a bow, a pair of razor-sharp chakrams. These were his honor guard, the Seraphim, each one equal in power to the commander Cassiel. Rias, Naruto's voice was a whip crack, shattering their stunned awe. This is our fight. Sona, coordinate defenses. Zenobia, Kiba, you're the front line. Akeno, air support. Kaneko, you're our shield. Protect everyone. His orders were instant, instinctive, and they obeyed without hesitation. This was no longer a battle of tactics, it was a battle for existence. And what about you? Rias shouted as she and Akeno shot into the sky, a storm of destruction and lightning gathering around them. Naruto grinned, a fierce, feral expression that was all sharp edges and burning will. I'm going to commit blasphemy. He shot from the balcony like a cannonball, a streak of orange and black aimed directly at the heart of the false god. The battle that followed was a war on two fronts. Below, the Alliance engaged the Seraphim Guard. It was a desperate, brutal affair. These were not mindless soldiers, they were divine weapons, each a master of its craft. Kiba and Zenobia moved as one, a dance of demonic darkness and holy light, their swords weaving a net of steel around a spear-wielding seraph. Sona and her peerage erected massive walls of magically infused water, trying to contain the archer seraph's arrows of light, each one exploding with the force of a missile. Kaneko, her body now wreathed in a faint, white aura of her own burgeoning senjutsu, became an immovable anchor. She would appear where the line was about to break, catching a seraph's blow meant for Saji or Irina, her small frame absorbing impacts that should have shattered her. Above, Rias and Akeno were a storm of crimson and violet, their combined powers a maelstrom of destruction that held two of the seraphim at bay. They were outmatched, but they were not broken. They fought with the ferocity of those defending their home, their family, their entire world. They fought to prove that Naruto's faith in them was not misplaced. High above, in a ray LM of pure power where the laws of physics were merely suggestions, Naruto clashed with Zerachiel. He was instantly in his Kurama chakra mode, a blazing sun of golden energy. He formed a Rasenshuriken and hurled it, the screeching disk of wind capable of shredding matter on a cellular level. Zerachiel simply held up a hand. Order, he commanded. The Rasenshuriken, an attack of pure, chaotic energy, wobbled in the air and then simply unraveled, its complex chakra formula deconstructed into nothingness. What? Naruto gasped. Your power is chaos given form, Zerachiel's voice echoed, devoid of emotion. I am the embodiment of divine, absolute order. Your chaos cannot exist where I am. He swung his sword of light. It didn't just cut the air, it cut reality itself, leaving a black, sizzling void in its wake. Naruto dodged, the edge of the attack grazing his chakra cloak, causing it to flicker violently. This was a power on a completely different level. Zerachiel wasn't just strong, he was a fundamental law of his own making. Naruto summoned chakra arms, forming a dozen Rasengans, and attacked from all sides. Zerachiel didn't move, he simply existed, and as the Rasengans entered his immediate vicinity, their rotation slowed, their energy neutralized, until they popped like soap bubbles. It is futile, human. Your every effort is a deviation from the perfect order I represent. And all deviations must be corrected. He pointed his sword at Naruto, and the very ground beneath the town began to shift. The broken concrete, the twisted steel, the very earth itself reshaped itself, forming a forest of razor-sharp, crystalline golden spikes that erupted towards Naruto. Naruto was forced to fly higher, dodging and weaving through the deadly constructs. This was impossible. How see? Old he fight a man who could simply decide his attacks didn't work. He's a system, kid, Kurama growled. His power is an operating system that overwrites anything that doesn't follow its rules. You can't beat him with an application. You need to crash the whole damn system. Kurama was right. Raw power, even the bijus, was just another form of chaos to Zerachiel. He needed something else, something that stood outside the system. Naruto closed his eyes in midair. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, he let go of Kurama's chakra. He let go of his own. He reached out, not for power, but for understanding. He touched the natural energy of this strange, new world. He touched the life force of his friends fighting desperately below. He touched the cold, sterile energy of the angels. He even touched the twisted, arrogant law of Zerachiel's own soul. He balanced them all within himself. He opened his eyes. The change was profound. His Kurama cloak vanished, replaced by a simple, elegant coat of black chakra. His skin took on no special glow, but a serene, transcendent power radiated from him. 9 black, floating orbs, truth-seeking orbs, materialized behind him in a halo. His pills became a cross of vertical toad slits and horizontal fox slits. He had entered 6 paths sage mode. Zerachiel, for the first time, showed an emotion. A flicker of divine confusion. What is this? Your chaotic energy is gone. Yet, you are more. I'm balanced, Naruto said, his voice calm, resonating with a newfound depth. He floated before the archangel, no longer a raging sun, but the quiet, unshakable center of the universe. He raised a hand, and one of the truth-seeking orbs shot forward, transforming into a sharp, black spear. Zerachiel met it with his sword of light. The impact was world-shattering. The black orb, a manifestation of all things, met the sword of absolute order. And for the first time, Zerachiel was pushed back. The holy light of his sword flickered where it touched the orb. His absolute law, being negated by a power that encompassed all laws. My turn, Naruto said. He moved, and the battle for Kuo Town became a legend. He was no longer just a fighter, he was a master of all creation. He used the truth-seeking orbs as shields that nullified Zerachiel's reality-cutting slashes, and as weapons that could change shape at will. He flew through the air with a grace that made the angels look clumsy. His every movement a perfect symphony of power and control. He launched miniature Biju bomb Recentricans, each infused with a different elemental nature, overwhelming Zerachiel's attempts to order them. The archangel, the embodiment of divine perfection, was being dismantled. His serenity cracked, replaced by a rising, indignant fury. Impossible, he roared, his mental voice a shriek of disbelief. This cannot be. An imperfect being cannot wield such perfect power. I am the will of heaven made manifest. I am order. He gathered all of his power, all the light from the false dawn, into his being. His body began to glow, becoming a humanoid star of pure, annihilating energy. If this world chooses chaos, then it will have oblivion. I will enact the final verse. All will be unmade, and from the perfect silence, I will begin anew. He was going to detonate, an explosion of divine law that would rewrite reality for light years in every direction, erasing everything. Naruto looked down. He saw Rias, her body bruised but her crimson aura burning brighter than ever. He saw Akeno, raining down judgment on the last of the seraphim. He saw Kaneko, standing over a wounded Irina, shielding her with her own body. He saw his friends, his family, fighting to the last breath. He brought his hands together, the last 2 truth-seeking orbs merging with his palms. He gathered all the power within him, his own chakra, Kurama's, the sage's understanding, the faint echo of every tailed beast's energy, and poured it into one final, ultimate attack. 2 massive Recentricans formed in his hands, one a swirling vortex of magnetic seals, the other a boiling orb of black and red lava chakra. 6 paths. Sage art. Lava release Recentrican and magnet release Rasengan. The power of Son Goku and Shukaku. The power of bonds. You're not creating a perfect world. Naruto yelled, his voice echoing with the power of a god. You're just destroying one because you're afraid. You're afraid of a world you can't control. A world where a demon can be a hero, and an angel can become a monster. That's the truth you can't stand. He shot forward, a blur of black and orange, thrusting both attacks into the heart of the self-destructing archangel. For an instant, there was a clash of two opposing creation myths. Zerachiel's perfect, silent, white oblivion against Naruto's chaotic, vibrant, multicolored reality. Naruto's reality won. The attacks didn't just overpower Zerachiel, they tore his ideology apart. The magnet release pinned his divine energy in place, and the lava release melted the very foundations of his absolute order. The blinding white light of his explosion was consumed, imploding into a sphere of swirling black, orange, and red. And then, with a final, silent flash, it was over. The false golden dawn shattered like a pane of glass. The real dawn, the true dawn of a new day, began to break on the eastern horizon, its gentle, hopeful light spilling over a town that had survived the apocalypse. Zerachiel, his wings gone, his light extinguished, fell from the sky, no longer a god, just a broken man in white robes. He crashed into the ruins of the school, defeated not just in body, but in soul. Naruto, his 6 paths sage mode fading, drifted slowly to the ground. He was utterly spent, his body aching, his chakra reserves scraped dry. He landed in the center of the ruined plaza, and the fighting around him had already stopped. The last of the Seraphim, their master defeated, had simply faded into nothingness. He stood there, panting in the quiet morning light, swaying on his feet. He wasn't alone for long. Rias was the first to reach him, her flight clumsy with exhaustion. She didn't say a word. She just crashed into him, wrapping her arms around him, holding him up. Akino landed beside them, leaning her head against his shoulder, her body trembling with relief. Kaneko took his hand, her grip small but unshakably firm. Sona, Kiba, Zenobia, Irina, they all gathered around him, a weary, battered, but victorious circle of heroes. They stood there for a long time as the sun rose higher, its warmth chasing away the last of the chilling holy light. They had faced the end of the world and had won. Naruto looked at the faces surrounding him. Devils, a fallen angel, an exorcist, a human, his family. He was a stranger in this world, but he had found his home in them. The war was over. The dawn had come, and in the shadows of the broken city, a world away in the deepest recesses of the underworld, an ancient seal, its power mysteriously weakened, cracked just a little wider. Chapter 10 End.